Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Sports Science webinar featuring electromyography and its applications in sports, conducted by the Department of PG Studies, Mangalore University. Well, today we'll be having a special webinar on electromyography. And before we start this webinar, I would like to give credit for a few persons. First of all, this webinar is being conducted in collaboration with the AD Instruments, which is based in Sydney, Australia. Well, they have got a base in Bangalore, and the training and technical manager, Mr. Sumant Bhatt, and his team has been helping me in giving the technical support for this program, as well as for all the information which you training which you'll be seeing in a few minutes from now is due to them. Anyway, we at Mangalore University have procured equipment through the UGC funding from AD Instruments, and we are equipped with a sports science laboratory with the cardiovascular fitness testing, as well as sports psychology and sports biomechanics, and the EMG is a part of it. So before we start this formally, we'll play the anthem of the university.
ಪಠಣ ಗುರು ಬುದ್ಧಿ ವಚನ ಇದು ವಿದ್ಯಾದಾನ ತಾಣ ಪಡೆದಾಗಲೇನೆ ಸಿರಿ ಶಿಕ್ಷಣ ನಮ್ಮ ಅಂಧಕಾರ ದಮನ ಮಂಗಳೂರು ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾನಿಲಯ ಮಂಗಳೂರು ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾನಿಲಯ ನಮನ ನಮನ ಜ್ಞಾನವೇ ಬೆಳಕು ಬದುಕು ಪಠಣ ಗುರು ಬುದ್ಧಿ ವಚನ ಇದು ವಿದ್ಯಾದಾನ ತಾಣ ಪಡೆದಾಗಲೇನೆ ಸಿರಿ ಶಿಕ್ಷಣ ನಮ್ಮ ಅಂಧಕಾರ ದಮನ ಮಂಗಳೂರು ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾನಿಲಯ ಮಂಗಳೂರು ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾನಿಲಯ ನಮನ ನಮನ ಜ್ಞಾನವೇ ಬೆಳಕು ಬೆಳಗೋಕೆ ಬದುಕು ಜ್ಞಾನವೇ ಬೆಳಕು ಬೆಳಗೋಕೆ ಬದುಕು
Well, that was the national anthem showcasing the Mangalore University, and for the benefit of the international participants, Mangalore University is situated at the southernmost tip of India. It's on the coastal side, and it's in the state of Karnataka, and it is bordering the Karnataka and the Kerala state. Okay, now we have to inaugurate this webinar. Our Vice Chancellor will say a few words and flag off this webinar.
Greetings from Mangalore University. I am extremely delighted to inaugurate the international webinar on Electromyography Applications in Sports, organized by the Department of Postgraduate Studies and Research in Physical Education of our university. Distinguished resource persons, Dr. Saju Joseph from Malaysia, Dr. Senthil Kumaran from the Manipal Academy of Higher Education, Manipal, Dr. Gerald Santosh D'Souza, the chairman of the Physical Education Department of our university, the registrar of our university, Mr. K. Raju Mogavira, KAS, convener of this international webinar, Dr. Prasanna BK, the faculty members and the students of the Department of PG Studies and Research in Physical Education, and ladies and gentlemen. Sports science plays an important part in today's world of sports. Valery Borzov, the 100 meters gold medalist at the 1980 Moscow Olympics, was considered as a perfect athlete to be produced in the laboratory, not literally, but having been assisted by scientists in analyzing technique and performance. The then East Germany, with their secret lab assisted techniques, produced many champions. Dick Fosbury and Perry O'Brien were the earlier proponents of using the laws of physics and translating them into performance in high jump and shot put, respectively. From then on, sports science has grown by leaps and bounds in Western countries, and just as in many other technologies, in sports technology also, they are miles ahead of the developing countries. India woke up to the reality of using scientific resources when the former sports minister, Mr. Rajyavardhan Singh Rathore, started the onset of Olympic medals, albeit few, but still, which led to winning of more medals in subsequent Olympic Games. When Abhinav Bindra won the gold medal using modern techniques, India became aware that these scientific inputs go a long way in deciding the medals in the highest sports competitions in the world. At present, many sports science facilities are coming up in private sector as well as sponsored by the government. Mangalore University, being one of the top sports universities in India, is not far behind. Taking advantage of UGC assistance, it has developed a sports science laboratory of its own. Further, the faculty is taking pains to acquire and learn the management of sophisticated equipment with the help of experts, the result of which the DeLuca Foundation and Delcesic United States of America have donated a EMG system to the university through its faculty. Based on this experience, the university has embarked upon the task of creating awareness of scientific support for sports performance and fitness. Thus, this first webisode of sports science webinar in the form of electromyography has come to fruition. Electromyography, I understand, is the analysis of electrical activity in the muscles, which would help in studying the factors affecting muscular performance and also help in rehabilitation process as well. I am aware of the fact that well-known experts in the field will be addressing you today, And as Dr. Gerald has briefed me, this webinar is with a difference. That is, it is only next to a practical experience. All the information will be provided in a very interactive manner, which would equip the participants with the fundamental knowledge as well as applications of EMG in sports. I understand there are quite a few international participants registered for this program. It's a rare opportunity for us to showcase our university to the world. On my behalf and on behalf of Mangalore University, I welcome you to participate in this Sports Science Webinar 1, Electromyography, its applications in sports. I am extremely delighted to inaugurate this Sports Science Webinar on this auspicious occasion. With this, while expressing my happiness in addressing you, I also wish the organizers the very best in conveying the information as well as to the participants to have fruitful sessions, meaningful discussions, deliberations in this webinar. Thank you and good day all of you. Thank you very much for your time and opportunity.
Thank you, sir, for your kind and encouraging words. And formally, on behalf of the university, on behalf of AD Instruments and all the persons in the faculty in the department, I would like to welcome all the participants to this webinar. And we have two of the outstanding, along with me, we have two of the outstanding resource persons, Dr. Saju Joseph, who has got a vast experience of applying electromyography in the field of sports, and as well as Dr. Senthil Kumaran, who is working in the prestigious Manipal Institute, Manipal Academy of Higher Education as a physiotherapist. And for today's session, we have as a moderator, Dr. Jay Prakash, who will be introducing the guests for this webinar. Now, I now hand over the session to Dr. Jay Prakash.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gerald. College, Mangalore, moderator for today's international webinar on electromyography applications in sports, organized by the Department of Physical Education, Mangalore University. I take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Saju Joseph, who is the speaker for today's webinar, Dr. Gerald Santosh D'Souza, and Dr. Senthil Kumar. I welcome you also. And also I would like to welcome all the participants for this international webinar. Starting with the first session for today, I would like to introduce the first speaker, Dr. Gerald Santosh D'Souza. He is a director in the Department of Physical Education, Mangalore University. Dr. Gerald D'Souza is an eminent personality who joined the Department of Physical Education in 1996. He has a PhD degree in physical education from Mangalore University, a gold medal awardee in BPED and MPED and also a topper in Diploma in Coaching Hockey from NSNIS Bangalore. He has been instrumental in developing hockey in and around Mangalore. Also, he has been a successful coach of the Mangalore University women's hockey team, which has won many laurels in the inter-university hockey tournaments. He is also an active sportsman who still actively participates in marathons and half of EMG testing. So I once again would like to welcome him, and over to you, Gerald sir. You can start your session now.
Thank you, Dr. Jay Prakash. It's just to give you a background of this webinar. Sorry for the technical disturbance. Well, yeah, I was saying that due to the contact of Mr. Suman from AD Instruments, we got the opportunity to get acquainted with the all my colleagues, and so I came up with this webinar where I would be talking about the fundamentals of this, and the other experts will be telling the application aspects of this. So I'll be sharing my screen with these few words. Let me come to my topic. Well, I'll be taking fundamentals of electromyography testing in sports. Now, what is electromyography? The word electromyography means myo is muscles, graphy is graph writing, and electro is electrical signals. So electromyography literally means the electrical signals of muscles. So here we study the muscle electric signals. Okay. So here you can see the three pictures of EMG, ECG, and EEG. All the three, the EEG is electroencephalography, which is the collecting of the brain signals, electrical signals from the brain, right? And so you can see all these three are collected, acquired, and presented in form of a graph. That it goes to show that the electrical signals are going on throughout the body, and EMG is the collection and analysis of the.
Sir,
Now, in the heart, there's a
sorry,
difference.
sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt. Yeah, can you maximize? Yes, thank you.
Ah. In the heart, you can see there's a uniform pattern of electrical activity. There, of course, there should not be any deviation from it because it can be interpreted as a problem in the heart condition. But in muscles, there are varied patterns of movements. So electrical activity keeps on changing based on different factors. For example, the size and number of fibers recruited, the health of the muscle, and the neuromuscular coordination, that is the connection of the nerves to the muscle, and the age of the muscle, if a person is old or a person is young with the better muscle toning, and the level of nervous stimulation. And so it studies the patterns and detects the lack of activation in related muscles of quadriceps. It shows the activation in different muscles, different, that is maybe rectus femoris or vastus lateralis or vastus medialis. All the four group of muscles, it shows the lack, whether lack or a different ratio of activation in these muscles. Then there is unbalanced contraction levels in symmetric or paired muscles, whether in the right side or left side, what is the balance or what is the coordination or what is the level of activity. Then it also shows the unnecessary activation. Suppose you are relaxed, you think you are relaxed, but in ergonomics, when you're sitting in a very bad posture, your muscles are constantly firing. You don't realize that, but you can study it to see whether your posture is proper or energy efficient. Then how does this occur? How does this neuromuscular occur? A little bit, a brief physiology into this. As we all know, the messages to and fro in the nervous system are sent through the synapses of the different nerves. But at the muscular, specifically at the muscular, there is something called as neuromuscular junction. And this, when the stimulation comes to the neuromuscular junction, there is an exchange of ions, and which causes depolarization in the muscle, which causes the creation of action potential, which in turn causes the release of calcium ions from the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and thereby creating some kind of binding in the actin and myosin filaments, which we call as sliding filament theory. So ultimately, we can say that the whole concept of electrical signals happens because of the depolarization or the creation of an action potential. And briefly, to give you a picture of this, is the neuromuscular junction. On the left is a macro picture where you can see how the nerves are connected to the muscles. Many sets of muscle fibers are connected with a nerve connection. And on the right side, you can see the microscopic at the neuromuscular junction, how there is a connection between the nerve and the muscle. So now what is electromyogram? It is a small electric currents are generated by muscle fibers prior to the production of muscle force. Like I said before, these currents are generated because of an exchange of ions across the muscle fibers and the nerve endings. And this starts a process of signaling for the muscle fibers to contract. Now, this electric current we capture, we acquire, and this is called as electromyogram. Now, surface EMG is the most common method of measurement. There are other kinds of EMG normally used in medical conditions or rehabilitative conditions called invasive or using wire or needle. But normally in sports, in kinesiological analysis, we use surface EMG. Now, there is a lot of research going on in electromyography. So let me just present some of the research. Now, this measurement of these signals, electrical signals from the muscles, is dependent on a number of factors and amplitude of surface signal. Amplitude means the range of the signals, that is the highest and the lowest. And this is captured in the form of voltage, that is microvolts or millivolts. And this amplitude, the time of firing of the muscles, and the frequency of firing of the muscles depend upon the timing and intensity of muscle contraction, the distance of electrode from the active muscle area. Now the sensors or the electrode, which when you connect it to your skin above the muscles, it has to be at the exact spot. If you deviate from that, if you deviate from the muscle, there can be change in the electrical signals. Then the properties of the overlying tissue. Even the properties of the skin are also very important. If you've got a thick skin, maybe the signals may not be that reliable. Similarly, the important aspect is the electrode and the amplifier properties. The hardware is very important because it is through that the signals are acquired. Then the quality of contact between the electrode and the skin. Sometimes the skin should be clean without any kind of oil or hair. So you should prepare the skin before contacting or before attaching the electrodes. Then, but the most important thing for us when we talk of electromyography, remember, is the time and intensity of muscle contraction. Time is how much time the muscle is contracting for a specific activity, and what is the intensity of muscle contraction. Now, there are methods to reduce the impact of non-muscular factors on the EMG signal. One thing we have to keep in mind is that it seems easy, just fix the electrodes to the muscles and you get the electrical signals. Well, it is not that simple. There can be many other factors which can add to the electrical signals. We call it as noise, or we call it artifacts. Now, this can be based on, because of the wrong connection of the electrodes, or based on external influences, external factors such as your other electrical appliances, or even if a person has got a pacemaker, even that will affect. And within subjects, but we can reduce this by placing the electrodes in the same skin location subjects, and as well as normalizing the EMG signal. There's something called as normalization, where we compare the EMG signals to a particular standard so that the variability between and within the subjects is reduced. Now, factors to be considered, like I said before, it all depends, the proper surface EMG signal depends upon the properties of electrodes and the interaction with the skin. The more I emphasize on this aspect, the better it is, because this is the whole crux of your EMG collection. And the amplifier design is very important. Nowadays, very advanced amplifiers or amplifiers which convert the signals from analog to digital have come. And the quality of measured EMG is often described as the ratio between EMG signal and unwanted noise contribution. That is, the noise contribution from other appliances, other electrical gadgets should be much less compared to the EMG signal. Then your measured EMG is very reliable. And so the goal is to maximize the amplitude of your muscular signals. And the signal to noise ratio is determined almost exclusively by the electrodes. Now, there are two kinds of electromyography, two applications as such. One is clinical application, one is kinesiological application. Clinical is mostly done in the hospitals or as a therapeutic process, where it's diagnostic or to find out the nerve conduction properties. If a person is recovering from, let's say, of his nerve connection, these are done. And normally they study the motor unit potential, and normally here the wire or the needle electromyography is done. So it is more reliable, because when you do it in a medical basis, you have to have a high reliability for your findings. Whereas kinesiological electromyography is mostly done for gait analysis or other kinds of mostly which is suited for us sports persons in dynamic settings. That is relationship of muscular function, maybe, or evaluation of timing of muscle activity, examine the strength and force production, and also interaction of different muscles. Here, the kinesiological electromyography is used, and because of the dynamic aspects of this, mostly surface EMG is used. Now, how is EMG measured? EMG can be invasive as well as non-invasive. Non-invasive we call as surface electromyography, where the electrodes or the sensors are attached by means of some sticker or means of some tape. Whereas invasive means wire or needle electrodes, which are very thin and which are under medical supervision, they are inserted into the specific muscles. And the EMG is measured in millivolts or microvolts. But as I said before, they can be interfered with spurious signals such as artifacts, voltages like AC, fans, cell phones, and computers, etc. So you have to make sure that when you are going for testing, you have to have as less electronic items around as possible. And therefore, the quality EMG systems and a versatile and analog to digital signal recording system, or we call it an amplifier or transducers, is very, very important. Now, how do we record? What are the recording systems? There are three kinds of recorders. That is strip chart recorders. Normally, we see this when they record a ECG, you get in the form of a chart printed. There are strip chart recorders. There are multi-channel analog tape recorders and also computer-controlled data recorders. Normally, what we are using for our systems are, at the present time, is computer data controlled data recorders. Now, in each of these instruments, the response of recording device must be at least equal to that of the EMG signal being recorded, meaning they should have the capacity of getting the EMG signal. And for surface EMG, normally the signal is gathered in 10 to 500 hertz. And the direct online recording into the computer is always preferable and is done nowadays. And recording can be done either through cable or telemetry. Cable is attaching wires, but this is not very suitable for dynamic type of testing. But telemetry, that is from a remote source or more specifically by cordless sensors, is also done, especially for gait analysis or dynamic EMG testing. And the quality of recorded signal is principally controlled by two factors. The sampling rate. Remember this word, the sampling rate is very important, as well as the amount of artifact, which I've told before, which are the non-EMG components in the recorded signals. We have to reduce these non-EMG components. Now, for us physical education professionals, what does EMG mean? What is the use of EMG? Well, I'm sure all of us must be thinking, can I do this? What about the equipment? What about the cost and all those things? Well, those things are there. But more importantly, as professionals, we have to be aware and educated about the latest technologies. Maybe we may not, all of us might not go for actual testing, but we should understand what is happening and what other people are testing and giving the result. We should be able to apply it in our fields. Suppose I'm a gym owner, gym instructor, or a fitness trainer. Suppose and another person has done a research using electromyography on different muscles. The effect of squats on different quadriceps muscles. What is the timing of their firing, or how much of load is felt on maybe vastus medialis or vastus lateralis, or which angle the best load is, best resistance is given. If those kind of things come to us, even if we're not doing the EMG studies, we should be aware of it and we should be able to apply it in our particular fields. And for sports specific uses, EMG can be used to identify the muscles for a specific task. Suppose, I've seen many in the people in the gym who go to the gym doing resistance exercises. Normally, they do the exercises based on a feeling that this muscle is being used for that work. Well, it is seldom true, because the muscle application or the muscle recruitment changes as you change the angle of your movements, as you change the speed, as you change the posture. So for that reason, if you can understand, for example, for bench press, what are the exact muscles? We all know that pectoralis major is being used, but what are the other muscles? So we can understand this. So we can identify the muscles. We can identify the variation in different pairs of muscles. For example, the right leg or the left leg, both the quadriceps, you can understand, is there any variation in a squats when both the legs are being used, both the pair of muscles are being used? Is there any variation between the left and the right? Then to evaluate the fatigue conditions of the muscle. You know, the fatigue aspects of the muscle is also important. As you keep on exercising, increase the repetition, the muscle gets fatigued. You know, your determination may help you to complete the repetitions, but the muscle firing of the muscles reduces, the EMG activity reduces, and this can be found out. Then also to evaluate the muscle activation during injury, that is before injury and post injury, and also during injury, what to what extent the muscles are have stopped their activity, and also the functional analysis of sports skills and techniques. Uh, Doing a particular activity, maybe something like a volleyball smash, what are the different muscles are used, and at which part of your skill, which muscles are firing. And ultimately, all this helps us to improve sports performance. And what are the resources required for this EMG study? Well, most important, the hardware aspects are, as I said before, EMG sensors. They can be wired or wireless, but wireless are more, what is that? For dynamic activity, wireless are more preferred, but wired are actually more reliable. But if you are doing it in a stationary position, wired is good. But with the recent advancements, I don't think there's much difference between wireless and wired also. Then there is, which we are using, we have got the Delcis Avant Trigno system. Then there's also the Noraxon amplifier as EMG logger application. Of course, you should have the sensors also. You can do it in Bluetooth device also, in the laptop, and importantly, amplifiers or transducers or signal recorders are very important. And the software, a lot of companies give the software, like we are using a lab chart by AD Instruments, and they're also software by Delcis or Noraxon or other by iWorks, which I have displayed on the screen. So hardware and software are very important. Now, what are the steps involved in EMG analysis? Well, first is you have to find out the objectives of the study. That what do you want to study, do the study on, whether it is strength or evaluation of injury or gait analysis, and identify the task. If it is a strength, what do you want to find out the strength compared between different muscles, or do you want fatigue? Then to locate the muscle, which part of your body or which muscles you want to really do the study on. Then identify the site. Suppose the quadriceps, identify the site, identify the muscles, and place the EMG sensors on those muscles. Then connect this EMG sensor to the hardware software, conduct the task, that is the exercises. While you conduct the task, the data acquisition, data is acquired in your software. Then analyze the data. There is uh, the raw data is derived. I mean, other parameters like RMS, the integral is derived from the raw data. You have to analyze the data. Then you have to prepare the charts and reports. Now, this is the brief steps involved in EMG analysis. Perform the task, signals are captured, raw data is captured, and it is further processed, and finally it is interpreted. Now, let me go a little bit deeper into this EMG data acquisition. The EMG electrodes can be invasive or non-invasive. To my left, we can see the EMG electrodes or sensors from Delcis and Noraxon. To my right is the right of the screen is the needle or wire bio electromyography. And amplitude of motor unit depends on the diameter of the muscle fiber. Like I said before, distance between active muscle fibers and the detection side. You know, there's a lot of fat, even then the amplitude might suffer there. Then filtering properties of electrodes themselves. The electrodes are gathering all the signals from outside is very difficult. Electrodes should be very specific. You should gather only the signals from the muscles. because the objective is to obtain a signal free of noise. Noise, I said, external sources of external signals. And the electrode type, that is electrode of the sensor and the amplifier, play a very important role in obtaining a noise-free signal. Now, recent manufacturers take this as a challenge, and they are trying to do everything possible to get the best, the most appropriate amplifier and electrode. And I said before placing the sensor, see that as a trial, just place electrode in the location and just see if the signal is being obtained. Just see that the signal is being obtained well before attaching it, for the data acquisition. In preparation of the scan, light hair won't matter much because nowadays the sensors are fine, very advanced. But if the person has got thick hair, then you have to clean it up. Or if the skin is oily, then you have to clean it with some alcohol so they can get the best signal possible. And normally there are a lot of references about how to place an electrode on a specific muscle. And as I said before, this noise, that is external signals, have to be reduced so that you can get a clean and clean muscular signal, electrical signal from the muscles. Now, cenium.org, you can go to cenium.org, that is Surface Electromyography for Non-Invasive Assessment of Muscle. This is a standard, the multinational consensus have come up with a standard set of references, set of instructions, which is accepted globally about how to attach the sensors with the proper landmarks. And you can see here, I'll just, you can see here, for example, rectus femoris, they have said is a location halfway between ASIS and superior patella. This is the ASIS, that is anterior superior iliac spine, which you can feel it from outside. And this is the superior patella, top of the patella, halfway from here to here, halfway, approximately you have to do it. And the direction, this direction, ASIS to patella. And similarly, lactus vastus lateral is 2/3 way of lateral patella to ASIS, and here this is vastus medialis. Like that, there is for each and every major muscles, they have the cenium has come up with a reference, and you can go to cenium.org to get the references. Similarly, there are many references which instruct about how to attach the sensors for a particular muscle. And this is a data acquisition system. Of course, it's just an example. I'm not advertising any of this thing, but since I'm familiar with it, I'm using it. Delsys, of course, Noraxon is there. We are using this Delsys system in our department. Then the most important, once you have these electrodes and the system, we have got the EMG sampling and recording. The sampling recording is the sampling rate is very important. Normally, when you say sampling rate of 1000 hertz, means that the EMG signal is measured 1000 times every second. Please make yourself familiar with these terms. Hertz. Hertz is nothing but the speed at which the sampling is collected. And the frequency response of the recording device must be at least equal to that of the EMG signal. I have said this before, this is again the repetition. But for surface EMG signal, generally 10 hertz to 500 is considered to be appropriate, considered to be optimum. And one important thing, when I said noise, how to remove the noise, there's something called as signal filtering. Filtering is you are removing the higher frequencies and the lowest frequencies which can occur due to external interference. Like I said before, 10 to 500 hertz is the best frequency, the best for muscular electromyography. Below this and above this, we can filter by giving band filter or being notch filters. There is something in the hardware as well as software where you can filter the signals which are coming into the data acquisition system. Like I said, the signals can be from outside as well as the muscle, but in order to make it between almost purely the muscular signals, we filter these signals by applying a band pass filter, which is between 20 and 500. So signal filtering is also very important. Now, once the This is a repeat of that. And what does this EMG interpretation tell us? Once you get the EMG data, what does it tell us? It tells us when the muscle is on, when the muscle is off, which part of our exercise muscle is firing, which part is relaxing, and the relative increases and decreases muscular activity. When does the muscle activity start increasing, when it is stop decreasing, where is the peak of the muscular activity? And so it helps us to compare between two muscles together, as well as compare the muscles between different persons. And this data can be used to interpret the changes as the muscle gets tired, as well as change in muscle signals at different stage of the activity, as well as pre and post rehabilitation work. But one thing you have to keep in mind is EMG does not tell us how strong a muscle is. Understand? EMG does not tell if a muscle is stronger than the other muscle. It just tells us how much the muscle is activated for a particular work. It also does not tell us whether the contraction is concentric or eccentric, and if the muscle is being voluntarily contracted or no. So don't compare two people. Oh, look, my signals are, my MB is more millivolts is higher than yours, so I am stronger. It's not that. Uh, the raw signals are a relative term for a particular individual. And so interpretation has to be done very cautiously. Inherent problems occur in the existing process, so we have to do it very cautiously to get reliable results. Now this is the screenshot of the what we have acquired. Now here you can see the raw signals, and here you can see how the raw signals are converted into RMS. RMS are made more smooth. RMS are nothing but getting the average of, I have done here 500, what is that? 0.5 of a second, and it is squared and rooted. So it's a square root, or called the RMS. And so here is displayed together. That is, here we have got the 6 muscles on top and the corresponding 6 RMSs. So if you find the RMSs, it's easier for us to have a picture of how the muscle is being activated. So this is what we got. This is what I got from the lab chart from AD Instruments, but various other systems are also there. And now let me come to the more of the interaction aspect of this. Now I'll take you through how the EMG signals are collected. Of course, keep in mind, this is what we are doing using the DELSI system, but I think almost all the procedures are similar in whatever systems you will be using. Now this is what you can see in my hand is a DELSIS sensor, which we recently got from the, it is a Bluetooth sensor also. It can be connected via Bluetooth to a mobile device, so it need not take the whole amplifier as such. And it is blinking in the sense it is paired. And these are the contacts which come into contact with the muscles when they are stuck to the skin. And these relay the signals. And this is the contact for the charging of the sensor. And the arrow shows that you have to align this arrow with the length of the muscle. Now this is the receiver, this is the amplifier signal converter, and it gets the signal through the radio signals as radio signals, and then it transfers the signals via USB to the software in the laptop. It also acts as a charging dock for the sensors, and you can see the USB port as well as the charging port. And once the sensors are paired, sensors are charged, you remove and pair it. You can see all the 6 sensors over here, which we'll be using for the demonstration now. And this is paired using the DELSIS utility system in the laptop. And this is a specialized sticker, double-sided sticker, which we use to stick it to the skin. Once you stick it to the, you peel off the outer cover and stick it to the muscles. Here we are using the quadriceps muscles, that is rectus femoris, vastus lateralis, and vastus medialis on both the legs. And once the a sensor is paired, then we go for the testing. Now here the athlete, the subject is doing squats, lunge squats, as well as squat jumps. We'll see the difference in, now you can see the sensors. This is the squats. And as is doing lunge squats, we will also show you how the data is being collected in the laptop. The data is collected continuously in the laptop over here. You can see how the data is moving to the left. You can see here, as well as now we'll be doing the squat jumps next. You can see the gap between the firing is less in the squat jumps because it's almost done on a continuous basis. You can't stop in between. So this is the data which we have acquired from that particular subject while doing squats, squat jumps, and squats, lunges, and squat jumps. And here you can see the six muscles. From the top three are the left quadriceps. That is, the top is rectus femoris left, vastus medialis left, vastus lateralis left, and the bottom three are rectus femoris right, vastus medialis right, and vastus lateralis right. For those of you who may not be aware, vastus lateralis is the thigh muscle on the outside, vastus medialis is thigh muscle on the inside, and the rectus femoris in the center. So here, this is the chart which we have acquired from that data testing, and I will take you through this. Now you can see the electrical signals from the muscles which I got for 5 repetitions. First is the squats, this is the lunges, and the last one is the squat jumps. And here I'll just pause for a second. You just see the difference between the squats and the squat jumps. The squat jumps is almost, like a curved type, but in the squat lunges, you see when one muscle is completely closes of a sharp stop here, where the other muscle, other side is almost like a curve. When this muscle is sharp here, the other muscle is curved. We are starting the right leg lunges. So the lunging leg, the muscle is almost, when you start coming back, electrical activity stop, but the leg in the back, the electricity continues, most probably the back leg, because it has to support the body weight. When the front leg is coming back, it is doing that. Okay, we'll go further. Now we have a real-time demonstration of how we have used the video to find and how to coordinate the video as well as the recording. As the subject starts doing his squats, you can see this blue line which keeps going ahead in tune with his squats. When his squats is coming up, let me just stop when he, okay, here, when I stop it here, you see at which part that blue line stops over here. See is the electrical signals over here. It's not yet reached the peak, but I think when he's about to get up, that is where he's putting the force to get up. That time the muscle is reaching the peak. You can also find out the timing, at which time of his activity his muscles are firing, more force is required. Further, I'll be showing you the RMS also. There also you'll be getting a better idea because the curves are smoother. So this is for the, as I said before, this is for the lunges. And the right leg, when it lunges, see, it comes sharp over here, stops over, and left leg sharp over here. So this is what is happening over here in lunges. See, the different active muscles are recruited in different way. I'll show you the values also later on. And then we have got the squat jumps, where the difference between the repetitions are much less because it's a continuous sort of activity. You can't stop in between. But of course, raw data is very, very important. Well, sorry for that break. Way here. Well, this is also done for demonstration purposes, so don't take too much about the findings. But I've just, see now here, when he's going down, see, just when he's coming up, he's reaching almost the peak. You see this blue line over here. Now we can see it better with this RMS over here. So yeah, now it's just coming down the peak, but the different muscles are different. For example, rectus femoris and this way, yeah. So this is a demo of how we can acquire the data, how we can interpret the data along with the software which we have here. And I'll just show you a brief about this software also. This one, well, he's doing lunges. Now see when he's, okay, here, okay, see, when he's doing the lunges, so the line is over here. Now he's doing the, just when it's coming up, his muscles are taking because it's push off. So we thought when you're actually going down, it happens, but the actual force comes when it's pushing off from the ground. So this way we can analyze, being a kinesiologist, being a sports practitioner, fitness practitioner, we can analyze which part of the movement the actual force is applied. And further going ahead, we'll apply all this data, we can put it on a form of a chart. The software also has got something called as, yeah. This data, same data we have transferred it to a chart over here. It's called a data pad. And I've also calculated, if you see down over here, I've also calculated the mean, that is for the best 3 repetitions, I've calculated the mean. And first here it shows you the rectus femoris left and rectus femoris right. See, the rectus femoris left has got 0.07 of activation, whereas rectus has 0.4, and vastus medialis also, the left side is much stronger activated than the right side. Same in all the other, the right side is much activated on the left side. There's more difference in the activation in squats, whereas squat jumps, it's almost very minute difference, but in squats, there's more difference, maybe because of the difference in the technique, or maybe his left muscles are more activated or more used, or something like that. But you can analyze this, you can compare the different muscles, and side by side, you can see. And after this, we can also convert this into a chart, into a graph over here. Over here, you can see these are the right, this is for the squats, this is for the left leg forward lunges, this is for the right leg forward lunges, and this is for the squat jumps. And the first 2 pairs are, one is left side, right side, left side, right side, left side, right side. This is for the quadriceps, rectus femoris, vastus medialis, vastus lateralis. You can see the left side is always higher, only in cases of here, because the right leg foot is going forward first. So slightly right leg, naturally it has to have more activation, but still you can see that in the vastus medialis over here, the left foot itself, left leg is having a little bit more activation than the right. So this way, a lot of things you can use this, you can analyze, you can process the information which you get from the raw signals, and you can do your own conclusions, of course. But most important thing that I said was, the first and foremost important thing is you have to get clean signals, because all your analysis is done on the base of the raw signals. The more cleaner your signals are, more reliable your signals are, then the more reliable your data, your analysis will be. And this software is very wonderful in the sense that, see, you can have a place where all the four can be put in one single window, where that athlete is doing over here. So athlete is working over here and it is displaying on the screen. Of course, these are the process. These two are the which one, the data pad, and these are processed. It doesn't happen live. Okay, so this is how you can acquire the data. And as I come to the end of my lecture, now let me just summarize the meaning. All of us should be should understand EMG is a study of electrical activity in the muscles. It is not something French or Latin, should not be French or Latin for us. Let us be more familiar with the word electromyography. It is a very simple word. Only thing we have to work hard towards, finding out how it can be used for our purposes. And as I said, the users are plenty, especially for us sports people. We can do muscular analysis. We can study the muscle activity in response to different treatments. We can do gait analysis. We can do analysis of muscle response to injuries, rehabilitation. We can do analysis of fatigue, and we can also analyze the patterns of different activities, just like what I did for squats. And the procedure, placement of electrodes, acquire the data, filter the data for unnecessary noise, and process the data and interpret the data. So with these few words, I'm ask you to excuse us for the technical lapse which happened. Of course, as I said, tell my friends, conducting a webinar is very easy because you don't require stages and all, but the most important thing is the network connectivity. I'm sure in the rest of the session, there won't be any problems. So thank you once again. Thank you all. Whatever questions you have, you can type it in the question and answers box, which can be discussed. Thank you once again.
So now we have come to an end of the first session. We have a question from Sridevi Gangar. Sir, is this test is better before coaching or after coaching for the first time player or basic starter of playing?
Well, this is a very technical subject. So we got a panel of people to answer. They got Dr. Sar Joseph, we got Mr. Sumant Bhatt. Also, I think we have got Mr. Senthil, Dr. Senthil. Now, okay, how will EMG help to know
The effectiveness.
how will EMG help to know the effectiveness of training? Well, Dr. Sar Joseph, can you throw light on that? Since you have done a lot of EMG on.
Yeah, good morning. Yes, you can come to know about the effectiveness of training by seeing the signals where actually the muscle is working or not. Now, for example, the video which showed the person who was doing lunging, actually the technique of lunging was done wrongly. And if you look into the knee was going ahead of the ankle joint during the that is when the person was going to a stop position. So what happens is that for example, when you want to retrieve, if your knee joint is 90 degrees, then it is quite good. But if your knee joint is something, that is your ankle joint is here, your knee joint is here, so the knee is short more than the housing line of ankle joint. So what happens is that time taken for retrieval is so late. Actually, if you can see, you can also see the time factor for the muscle activation to initiate. So that means now, for example, in sports like karate or boxing, or you go for an attack and then you want to retrieve. If your knee is going forward like that, and then if you're trying to retrieve for the counter attack of the opponent, you will be and actually taking the beats or taking the shot from the opponent, because your retrieval speed is relatively slow. So that way we could also analyze what is actually the problem in the muscles, and if you can actually correct the technique from that point of view, then probably the retrieval speed of the athlete will be much faster. And also the technique of training, if you train the muscles according to that, then your retrieval speed, initiation angle also will be at a faster rate. I hope it gives you an information regarding that.
Thank you, sir. The second question is, how is the data?
How is the data compromised when an EMG sensor falls off during testing? No compromising. You have to do the test again.
Okay.
You cannot compromise it.
That is why I said that the putting of these sensors is very important because you have to take all the precautions to see that the sensors are attached properly. Of course, always trial and error basis. And one more question is how to calculate the analyze and time domain. I think this is more to do with the post acquisition analysis. I talked with Mr. Sumant. We are coming up with a workshop on how to use the software also, giving a trial software to all the participants. So I think we can address this question then. Can we use this in a common way and expensive? I know this is very expensive. Sumant, why is the echo coming?
Sir, I think one of you can mute.
Okay. Sir, can you move, sir? Dr. Sargis? Okay, fine. What is it? Yeah, common way is expensive. I know it is expensive, but I don't think there's any way to go around it. But maybe for some institutions who are having this, they maybe rent the equipment. But as I said before, first let us be aware of how to do this, what are the systems, what are the requirements, and what are the available possibilities. And then slowly it will fall in place. You might have an opportunity to use this. And this is medical purpose. I think one of our panelists will be presenting on medical also, so he'll be answering or throwing more light on that. Then
I think most of the questions can be answered in the next presentation.
yeah, next presentation, all related almost to the next presentation by Dr. Sar Joseph, where he'll be talking more on sports and electromyography. So I now hand over my Dr. Jay Prakash to introduce the next panelist.
So moving on to the second session of today's webinar, I would like to introduce the second speaker, Dr. Sadhu Joseph, who is the High Performance Director at the Sports Authority of India, Bangalore Center. Dr. Sadhu Joseph hails from Alappuzha, Kerala. He has a PhD degree from Alagappa University, awarded in 2001 for his study titled Study of Isokinetic, Concentric and Eccentric Muscle Performance at Different Velocities for Knee Extensor and Flexors, Plantar and Dorsiflexor among national level sportsmen and non-sportsmen. He is also a diploma holder in coaching hockey, NSNIS Bangalore. He is also a MPed, BPed degree and a BSc degree respectively. He has attended various international and national courses and workshops. I would like to introduce the second speaker, Dr. Sadhu Joseph, who is the High Performance Director at the Sports Authority of India, Bangalore Center. Dr. Sadhu Joseph hails from Alappuzha, Kerala. He is a PhD degree holder from Alagappa University, awarded in 2001 for his study entitled for his study entitled Study of
Concentric
Isokinetic, Concentric,
eccentric
and
muscle performance
eccentric
at
muscle
different
performance
velocities
at different
for knee
velocities
extensor
for
and
knee
flexors,
extensor and
plantar
flexors,
and dorsiflexor,
plantar and dorsiflexor
national
among
level sportsmen
national
and
level
non-sportsmen.
sportsmen and non-sportsmen.
He is a
He is
diploma
a diploma
holder
holder
in
in
coaching
coaching
hockey
hockey
from
from
NSNIS
NSNIS
Bangalore
Bangalore
Center.
Center.
He is a MPed degree holder, a BPed and a BSc degree holder. He has attended various international and national level courses and workshops. Also has various awards and to his merits. He has also been awarded by Sahara Limited for contributing to Indian hockey team performance in international hockey in 2014.
2014.
He has served as
He
a
has served
senior
as a
biomechanist
biomechanist
and high
and high
performance
performance
director.
director.
He was the head of the Department of Biomechanics at National Sports Institute in Malaysia. Also head of the research and education at Movement Science Branch, National Sports Institute,
Malaysia. A senior sports biomechanist at National Sports Institution, Malaysia. Also worked as a junior scientific officer at Sports Authority of India. He has a very huge teaching experience for postgraduate and undergraduate courses. Also has been active in giving lectures at various national and international events. He is also a PhD guide to many research scholars. He has published many papers at the international journals. He also was a part of the Indian hockey men, women, and the junior teams as a performance coach, which has won many laurels at various international events. Also worked with BCCI for the development of cricket in India, and the list is more. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Sadhu Joseph for the second session of the webinar, and he shall talking on the EMG testing in sports. Over to you, sir.
Good morning. First of all, I thank the Mangalore University management for having invited me, and especially Dr. Jalal D'Souza and Suman Bhatt, who has taken all the efforts in organizing this webinar. Without much delay, I would directly go into my presentations. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, sir, fine. It's fine.
Okay. Yeah, I was working in Malaysia. Most of my presentations are from the studies which I did in Malaysia with my colleagues. And yeah, after coming over to SAI last year, joining Sports Authority of India, Bangalore as high performance director, not much of activities have gone into EMGs or anything like that, because more of coordination and education sessions were going on because of this corona. And so my presentation basically will be from my previous place of posting. And okay, just starting with the introduction. In sports biomechanics and rehabilitation, surface EMG is widely used for clinical diagnosis, muscle activation, and strength training, functional training, research. And here in this study, I mean, in most of my presentations, you find that, okay, my data results will be presented either in terms of percentage or mean moles. Why percentage? Because when you do an EMG study, you have to always relate to your maximum isometric contraction, the muscle activation during the isometric contractions, and then you have to calculate whether each muscle has achieved that is a relative performance in terms of the percentage of effort put in isometric contraction. And that's how you normally represent the data in finally. And why mean volts? Because in my presentation, there are many injury-oriented cases which I'll be presenting. And in those injury cases, it's highly difficult for the athlete to give his maximum effort. So whatever the mean volts that has been acquired from the data, through that itself, we are trying to interpret the data. So that's why the results will be on mean volts. So you, before doing any study with EMG, it's always essential for understanding various aspects of the testing. One is knowing of the sports activity, why you're doing the test, for what sport, and or what exercise, what is the effect of that exercise on that particular sport, etc. That you should know. Then mechanics of the technique, stages of technique should be known. Maybe whether you're going to analyze the approach or execution or the follow-through aspects. In execution, you may be having the takeoff, for example, in volleyball smash, the takeoff and then contact, the spiking action. So whether it is in during the takeoff you have issues or during the execution part. Then muscle actions, whether the muscle actions are, why means sometimes some exercises are isometric exercises, some are concentric exercise, some are eccentric exercise. So during the which exercise you are doing the testing, so that because the muscle, the results will not give you whether you are doing during concentric, eccentric, or isometric as described by Dr. Jaral. But as a tester, you should know that whether this exercise or the action is isometric, concentric, or eccentric. Then phases of training. In sports training, you know that there are general and specific preparatory period or competition period or transitional period. So when you are doing the training, whether it is during the general phase of training you are analyzing, or whether you are doing it during the specific training, because in general probably you may be using various general modes of exercises, whereas in specific training you may be adopting more of specific training methods which emphasize improvement in terms of the particular sports directly. Then while analyzing, okay, once you are for example you are doing a test at when muscle is fatigued, and then probably your data will vary. Whereas when the muscle is fresh and when you're doing the testing, naturally the muscle will give better output. If the muscle is tired and you are trying to do a same activity, then probably there may be other muscles which are involved in the activity that may contribute more for performance. So here, actually, I start my presentation with shoulder pain in a butterfly stroke swimmer. So this was actually a butterfly swimmer who had pain in the right shoulder, especially in the anterior deltoid. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. So we did both dynamic and static testings. Here you can see a functional trainer. On that we are doing the testing. This is a functional trainer, Kaiser equipment. So where you can see the synchronized movements of both the extremities. Now, but I'll be discussing more of a isometric type of activity. Now we had actually put up the EMG on biceps brachii, anterior deltoid, pectoralis major, and infraspinatus, both on right and left side. Now this is almost it's an entry point of a swimmer. See, one thing here I would like to let you know is that, okay, electronics and water does not go hand in hand. So if you take the electronic equipment to any pool or anything, probably it will get spoiled. So some of the tests, what we are doing is only on land, that is in dry conditions, and enabling to analyze things from what we find in the land condition. So yeah, actually I just wanted to, I'm just taking a model, there's a toy for explaining to you. Let's say in swimming, it is let's say this is the entry point of your hand. Okay, entry point hand into the water. And most of the people think that, okay, the force application start exactly when the person enters into the hand into the water. But actually, it's almost in 90 degrees with this shoulder joint. That is the time when actually he starts to apply greater force. Now, if he is applying greater force here, what happens is that you tend to find the person applying, the swimmer, instead of traveling forward, he'll be traveling in the same place because most of his force is against the water. So the buoyancy will push you back. When you apply force like this, the buoyancy will push you back. So you find that you try to swim in the same place. You don't really move forward. So actual application of force is almost at 90 degree. So here, this is almost entry point. And you find here, in this, the anterior deltoid of right, that is the injured shoulder, starts to activate. And the pectoral muscles of the left is activating, whereas the right is relatively not activating that much. Now, that was almost at 180 degree. And sorry, this is almost at 90 degree. That is where actually the activation is supposed to be done. Now here you find that the anterior deltoid, that is the right anterior deltoid, is activating, whereas the left anterior deltoid is not activating. And if you see here, the left pectoral is activating, whereas the right pectoral does not activate. Now, this is actually a issue of serious concern, because whether the athlete is doing the technique correctly or whether he is using the muscles right or not. Now, in slightly 10 degrees less than that, you still find the similar results of execution. That means the anterior deltoid is activating. So actually, the anterior deltoid is supposed to activate when you actually lift your hands sideways, upward, or something like that. Okay, or in forward direction. But when it's actually you're pushing down, anterior deltoid should not be activating, whereas the pectoral should be beginning to activate. So the same similarity of results were seen even at 80 degree angle, and also in 30 degree angle also. You can see in 30 degree angle also, the right anterior deltoid was activating and the right pectoralis was not activating. Whereas the left pectoralis was activating, and for the left anterior deltoid of this butterfly swimmer was not at all activating. Now, why is this issue of activation of anterior deltoid is that? Now, for example, let's say this is actually a serious issue with the technique of execution. So let's say that if you all can just experience by keeping your hand, the right shoulder, right elbow, and right wrist in one line, one plane. Keep your left hand on your pectoral muscle and try to push hard down. You find that, okay, the pectoral muscle is activating, whereas the anterior deltoid will not be actually activating that much if the elbow, wrist, and shoulder is in one plane of execution. But if you have your elbow higher than shoulder and wrist position, that means the elbow is slightly higher, the shoulder and wrist position is in one line, and now if you try to push down, you find that the pectoral muscle is not activating. So this is a issue with the technique. So if the swimmer during the stroke movement, if the elbow goes higher, slightly higher, then that makes the shoulder joint to internally rotate. So this internal rotation actually creates a kind of compression in the anterior deltoid, and that's why you find that the anterior deltoid is activating more, and whereas your actual bigger group of muscle, which actually is used for pushing down, starting with the pectoral and lat, but we have not done the lat, but then I just wanted to see the activation of pectoral. So in that angle itself, you find that, okay, the muscle is not activating properly, and instead of that you have a smaller group of muscle which is activating. And in swimming, you know that, okay, people do around 6 to 8 kilometers of volume of training per day. So let's say in one lap, 50 meters lap, if he does around 25 strokes, imagine for 6 to 8 kilometers, how many repetitions of the strokes he may be doing. So more the number of strokes which you are doing for a smaller group of muscle under injured condition will make the things further worse. So this was basically an issue with the technique. If you look into the same, you can see here the underwater video we captured, and we saw that, okay, the right elbow, the right tip of finger and the right elbow is slightly higher in relation to the left hand. That means already there is certain amount of internal rotation that has taken place in the shoulder joint that has made the elbow to go higher, and in relation you can find that, okay, the arms are slightly higher. Similarly, if you look into the elbow angle, also not so clearly visible, but then if you can actually see, you can find the wrist position and elbow angle slightly over rotated. And when he was doing the freestyle also, there's, you can see that the shoulder is shoulder internal rotation has taken place. You can see here at a very early stage, because you can see almost under there is a under your hand from the video to a certain extent. So that means already there is so much of internal rotation that has taken place in the shoulder joint. So this athlete basically had to correct his technique in order to improve his shoulder injury. Now, you find that, okay, in athletics, when athletes run, you find that your right, during the heel kick, your right heel goes and touches the left buttocks, and the left heel goes and touches the right buttocks. So this, what actually it does is that because of this kind of movement, there is actually, when the person is running, a lot of pelvic anterior posterior movements are taking place, which is actually reducing your speed of running. And that also causes you to land onto the, if you look in here, you can see that, okay, that also makes you to run onto the lateral aspect, though here you can find, okay, he's landing onto the front foot, and also see the orientation of the foot is slightly averted during the full landing phase. So and also you can find that there is a lot of tibial torsion instead of the hip joint, knee joint and ankle joint being in a straight line as a pendulum for running. Instead of that, you find that the knee joint is slightly out and the ankle joint is slightly inward. Same you can find on the left side. Now this is actually creating a lot of problem for running technique. So we wanted to see actually what's why this is actually happening. So what we did is that in the gym, we asked the athlete, we put the EMG on biceps femoris and semitendinous, and also in lateral gastrocnemius and medial gastrocnemius. But our main interest of visualization is onto the hamstring. So you find that, okay, biceps femoris, okay, the biceps femoris muscle, which is here, and the semitendinous, basically, which is the outer, okay. So there are actually three muscles there, but we are in a position to look into only biceps femoris and semitendinous. Semimembranous, which is there, we are unable to, because it's not on the surface of the hamstring area. So when he was doing basically the exercise, if you look into the left leg biceps femoris and semitendinous muscles contraction is almost similar. Whereas when he was doing the exercise on the right leg, okay, when he's doing on the right leg, you find that 85% of muscle contraction is onto biceps femoris, and only around 15% of muscle contraction is onto semitendinous. Actually, both the group of muscles have to actually, when you pull, when, for example, let's say this is biceps femoris and this semitendinous. So when you're doing hamstring curl, both the muscles have to pulled together for effective heel kick actions. Now here what's actually happening is one is contracting higher and other one is contracting lesser. Now if you look in, you find that okay, the person is doing here if the exercise correctly, where his hip joint, knee joint and ankle joint are in one line, one alignment. Okay, this is correct in terms of body posture, but in terms of the room, that is environment where he's actually doing the exercise, his body is not in perpendicular to the room environment, room condition. Instead of that, it is slightly inclined. So when your body posture is inclined, when you are actually pulling the weight, or when you're doing the leg curl, after almost 90 degrees of knee flexion, what happens is that the biceps femoris starts to activate greater. Because of this inclined condition, the pull will be more onto one side, that is internally it will start pulling. So whereas the external part, that is the outer part, that is semitendinous activation gradually reduces. So when you do exercise wrongly with your body posture slightly inclined, then you tend to have this kind of problems of having heel kicks also into opposite buttocks. Because here in training, what you're doing is you are pulling the heel towards the opposite buttocks. So in actual competition or in actual running also, you tend to have same issues. So it is to be seen that when coaches or physical education teachers or strength training people or physiotherapists, when they're doing the rehabilitation or strength training, you must ensure that you properly supervise the technique and see that the athletes are doing the technique correctly. If there is any deviation in execution of the movements, that will cause to all this kind of errors, and probably it will lead to some kind of injuries. Okay, here I just put a video of one of the Malaysian Commonwealth Game gold medalist training, and we have put actually EMG on his so here you can actually see that okay, this athlete, I'm not going to explain certain aspects of this issue because this actually to be a bit security oriented, because there are certain aspects in the technical things related to this lift. But then I just wanted to show you that okay, in competitive environment also we can go for doing the tests, so that certain aspects of muscle coordination and sequence of lifting or sequence of muscle activation could be looked into. And if the athlete has to do the technical correction, then you can go for doing the technical corrections based on the sequence of activation. And also here, since we have put the EMG, surface EMG on both the group of muscles, there are certain things like activation from one leg. That is, if one right leg is stronger, then the activation may start at an early stage in the right side, and whereas the left side will be just as a passive carrier. So that kind of issues also could be looked into. Right, here there is another case of a weightlifter who had a vastus lateralis tear, and you can see here when we have put the electrode onto the vastus lateralis. So this is actually a wired EMG, unlike the one which Dr. Gerald has shown you, where the electrode itself has the receiver, as well as there may be a gyroscope or even a magnetometer in that, and plus a goniometer in that. which can give all informations at an earlier stage. Whereas in this one, the wired one, probably you may have to have a coordinated effort of depending upon the software, you may have to have a coordinated effort of video and the EMG to be synchronized. If there is no synchronization, if the videos is bit that receiver, that is the transmitting is bit slow, then probably you tend to find wrong informations being piled up in relation to video. So you have to be a little careful. So you have to see that the latest technologies like Delsys or Noraxen, those kind of equipments have now been very systematic and has been very synchronized in nature. So here you can actually see that we did 2 tests for this athlete during his rehab. And if you see double leg press, you see that he is in a position to take around 237 kgs, and in single leg press, that is the injured leg, only 118 kgs, and then the non-injured leg is in a position to take around 200 kgs. And whereas the muscle activation left is with lower intensity, it is 103, but with right leg with 200 kgs, the activation is around 145. So relatively, it is a lower activation compared to double leg effort. Now, I'll just show you directly onto the knee extension exercise. The weight lifted in double leg knee extension is 85 kgs, whereas in single leg, left leg 57, right leg 57. And relatively, you find that when both the legs were doing the knee extension, the left leg was actually activating relatively lesser than the right leg. And when same amount under isolated condition, that is single leg knee extension, you find that okay, vastus medialis is activating lesser compared to the right knee vastus medialis. Same is on rectus femoris also. So here you find that the same weight was encountered, 85.5, whereas in left knee extension under single leg is only 57 kgs, but you find the activation is slightly higher, 280. Whereas if you look into the vastus lateralis, in 57 kg, it's in a position to almost show similar performance. Right and left is in a position to show similar performance. So this was actually a stage of rehabilitation to understand whether the athlete is in a position to activate the vastus lateralis similar to that of the non-injured leg. And the same athlete at a later stage, we went to look into certain things like half squat. Okay, after another 2 months of rehabilitation, so you find that okay, with 70 kg, you find that vastus medialis was activating this here, and vastus lateralis is here, vastus rectus femoris. So almost similar performance levels. Whereas when the weight was increased from 70 kg to 90 kg, there goes the issues. You find that the performance of vastus medialis drop, vastus lateralis is relatively drop, and the rectus femoris is activating. Now, on the non-injured leg, what happens? The performance was almost same, blue color, but the performance when from 70 kg to 90 kg it was increased, you find the medialis, lateral vastus lateralis and rectus femoris activating to a greater extent. Now this is mainly because, let's say this is the quadriceps group of muscle and this is vastus lateralis. When the weight is increased, there could be probability of shifting of orientation angle of the knee joint. Orientation angle means, or even the hip rotation could facilitate basically to activate the rectus femoris greater as compared to the vastus medialis or lateral axis. And in this you can find, especially when you do the knee extension, if you ask the person to keep the toe straight, and when they're doing the knee extension, they may be doing it correctly, but when they undertake heavier training loads, you tend to find that the hip joint has internally rotated. So what happens? The toe is slightly inverted now. Now, when the toe is slightly inverted, you tend to find that rectus femoris muscle group is activating much more than the vastus lateralis. So this is a point of identification for the coaches or trainers or rehabilitation person to know that, okay, the vastus lateralis is not fully trained enough to undertake heavier training loads. So if the person has to undertake heavier training loads, then the orientation of the foot has to be upward, and the athlete needs to strengthen the vastus lateralis, and the rehabilitation program for vastus lateralis has to be greater. Now, in the half squat, now here you find that, okay, the rectus femoris was activating more. Now, whereas on the right leg, this is totally the left leg and this is totally the right leg. Now, when you shift in your body weight from left leg to right leg, that means left leg to right leg, then the activation, that because the whole weight is falling onto the right leg, then probably the activation of all this vastus medialis, vastus lateralis, and rectus femoris could be higher. So this is another indicator for you to understand that now this athlete, instead of concentrating the weight on both the legs, is focusing on shifting the weight from left to right. Okay. And similarly, this is clean and jerk activity. If you look into when the weight was increased from 60 kg to 70 kg to 90 kg, there is a gradual increase of weight from in repetition. You find that vastus lateralis activation is gradually reduced and rectus femoris activation is increased. This is in the left leg. And in the right leg, if you look into, you find that there is a gradual increase from vastus medialis from 60 kg to 90 kg. Vastus lateralis is also activating to a higher level with increase in weight, and rectus femoris also is activating to a greater level. Now this is the left and right hamstrings. There also you find there is a slight increase in activation. This is mainly because when the frontal group of muscles are being compensated with load, the back rear muscles will take the loading. So probably that will be activating more on an eccentric form. That's why you find that the hamstring muscles are in a position to activate to a greater extent. So now this athlete, actually, when he was doing the clean and jerk movements, what is to happen basically was that his left leg during during the jerk, the left leg is to actually go front. That means the vastus lateralis is on left leg, and when the knee is flexed and kept in that condition, your left leg is likely to encounter heavy resistance. That is here, you can see here. Now this is the right leg. This is after the correction. So instead of right leg, the left leg, that other side is one which actually is to go forward. So this athlete basically, see, is almost 10 years of trained, experienced athlete. So automatically there's a neural automation that has taken place in him. So whenever he is doing the exercise, his left leg used to come during the snatch forward. I mean, that is during the clean and jerk forward. So what we wanted was, since his vastus lateralis was injured, we wanted to change his foot. Instead of left leg going forward, the right leg will be forward. Now here you can see in this, the quadriceps muscle, that if the leg which is behind trailing, the quadriceps muscle will not be activating that much other than to keep it straight like this. Whereas in this position, the quadriceps muscle, especially the vastus lateralis, and if your foot is slightly outward to maintain balance, to increase your base, normally you find that they don't go for keeping the knee straight, or that is the orientation of snatch straight like this. Slightly it will be wider. So you find that during this situation, the vastus lateralis will be activating higher. So in order to change this, we had to break down his neural optimization that has taken place. So we had to start with a bamboo, initially just a dummy action movement. And from dummy action movements, then we had to just a simple barbell, then with lightweight. But when we moved on to with the weight, again, this athlete tend to have the same issue because of the neural optimization with heavy weights. His left leg used to come forward. So it took almost 6 to 8 months for this athlete to change his technique. Instead of making the left leg to go forward, the right leg to go in front. And this guy went on to win a bronze medal in last Commonwealth Games after the technique correction. Now this is a typical case of bike fitting. Okay. Now many parents, they want to show that, okay, they are the trainers for the coaches. Now we do have in India, many husbands become the coach of the female athletes, and they become the coach like that. So in the same way, the parents were also excited to be the coach of their child. So they find that, okay, in internet, there are various methods of bike fitting. So one of the parent did the bike fitting, and he came to us, and when we found that, okay, this athlete, when he see here, you can see without the EMG, and then we put the EMG to really show to the parent this bike fitting, what he had earlier was wrong, and the new bike setup is more more helpful. So in order to do that, again, we did some EMG tests. So here you can see this. The blue one is before doing the bike fitting, and the orange color is after doing the bike fitting. So if you look into, see the blue one, the calf muscle, this left gastrocnemius, medial gastrocnemius, right lateral gastrocnemius, and right medial gastrocnemius were activating to a greater extent, whereas the quadriceps group, rectus femoris, vastus lateralis, and rectus femoris and right vastus lateralis were relatively activating lesser. So this cyclist, instead of making use of the bigger group of muscles, that is the quadriceps group, is making use of his calf muscles in cycling. So here you can find that actually the calves are activating to a greater extent in the old bike setup, whereas in the new bike setup, the quadriceps muscles were activating. Now here you can see the quadriceps muscle started activating, and relatively the calf muscle activation was lesser. So wrong techniques, wrong setup of the cycle height, or how front the seat should be, or how low the handle should be, what is your knee position in terms of the pedals. If those things are set correctly, then probably you could have a better efficiency in cycling. Many people, when they start cycling, because of the wrong mechanics, you tend to find that many are having knee problem, low back problem, or ankle joint problem. So this all can be sorted out if you have a correct bike setup, and also if you can use the EMG to establish that, okay, the muscles activated during this are the real ones, which are large muscles or force produced muscles, then it would be really good in terms of that. Now this is a shooter. He basically had a shoulder impingement, okay, nerve impingement. Basically what actually happened was that this guy has not been doing weight training for last 20 years. So always, the deltoid muscle has shrunk, there is atrophy has taken place. And what was actually happening was that when he's doing a shooting, or when it's triggering, when he's about to trigger, you can find that, okay, instead of shooting his target, he is actually shooting his opponent's target. So instead of getting scores for himself, he is facilitating scores for the opponent. So this was a issue with this athlete, and you can see that what we did was that, okay, laser was put onto the gun, and we were tracking during the triggering how much of distance the laser light was traveling from the targeted point. Okay, so this was done with a high-speed camera, and we also had EMG also synchronized with the video. And from that, if you look into, you can see that the anterior deltoid was always activating in each and every repetition, and whereas the other group of muscles were relatively less activating. Now, this was mainly, again, an issue, as I said, it's a nerve impingement syndrome. What was actually happening is that when he's triggering that, the anterior deltoid is activating, and that makes the elbow, that is arm to shift onto the, maybe internally or moving towards the inner side. And that was causing the problem for this athlete. So there is only one issue, one thing which can be done for this kind of athletes. One is that, okay, to stop the activity and make the muscles to be disused. Disuse means not to train for shooting for some time, and during that 6 months you start to develop your deltoid muscle. So the atrophy which has taken place is to a certain extent it is compromised with certain amount of strength, and then the nerve activation will be relatively better. So it took again some time for this athlete to return back to the sport condition with such a injury issue. Now this is actually another badminton player. Gerald, do I have time, or so it's almost 12 o'clock? So do I have time, or?
Continue, sir. No problem.
Okay. So this is a badminton player who had actually undergone Bankart shoulder arthroscopy repair, resection, and debridement done, and was undergoing rehab. And this athlete was supposed to be called, training for 2016 Rio Olympics. Okay, so we did some testing after certain amount of rehabilitation. So this is some with the equipment we did some testing, and we did further some testing with EMG, dynamic swing movements with shuttle and without shuttle. Okay, so the athlete was asked to do, when we did the strength testing, okay, to a certain extent, the back muscles, that is right shoulder back muscles, that is especially the posterior deltoid, infraspinatus, serratus anterior, lower trapezius, upper trapezius, and levator scapulae, all were activating to the required amount. And it was showing, okay, the athlete is quite strong onto the shoulder, because she is in a position to bring back almost to his shoulder alignment, and the resistance was quite good enough for the athlete to perform. And so we wanted to look into under dynamic swing movements with shuttle and without shuttle. So we asked the athlete to now do the movements during without shuttle, backward movement, and then swing action, and with shuttle. So with shuttle means we continuously supplied the shuttlecocks through a shuttlecock launcher, because if I do the service, my service may go here or there, and the athlete may not be in a position to execute the movement correctly. So we wanted to have similarity of execution. So we had a shuttle launcher which was set up at a particular angle, and the shuttle is to launch the this launcher is to launch the shuttle at a certain constant speed and a constant angle. And in such condition, this athlete was executing the movement. Now, if you look into the results, see, these muscles were activating much higher without the shuttle, and with shuttle, okay, with shuttle, the activation was relatively less. Okay. So you can see here the red one with shuttle, the activation was relatively less, whereas the without shuttle, the activation was relatively quite high. Now, if you look into this from here, if you see, it for me it was actually quite appealing. So when we showed the result to the doctor, the doctor who is actually the sports medicine doctor, he doesn't know the basic technique of execution. That's why in the first slide I told that you should know the activity. So the doctor did not know the activity. So the doctor says that, okay, with shuttle, if his muscle is not in a position to do the exercise, then this athlete cannot be cleared for participation for Olympics or starting her training for Olympics. Because according to the doctor, with shuttle, the performance is low, and without shuttle, she is in a position. That means with resistance, she is not in a position to do the activity. With resistance, without resistance, the person is in a position to do the activity. But if you look into this picture, see, without resistance, when the person was doing the activity, okay, during this, you have to actually, if you see here, the body is relatively erect, and you have, when you want to pull back, the muscle starts to activate. Okay, so relatively, see, you see the elbow drawn backward. So if you want to do the backward swing action, the muscle has to activate. Now, whereas in this condition, if you look into, the body is slightly inclined because the shuttle is launched from a higher angle. Okay, so in order to adjust the posture in relation to the shuttle, the person has to lean backward slightly. So when you are leaning backward, what happens? You don't, the gravitational pull of the earth facilitates your back swing relatively. That means the muscles are falling backward. So you don't have to really activate your muscles to that extent to pull back, because just your leaning backward will facilitate the weight of the arm and the gravitational pull to make the muscle to have its maximum stretch condition. So or the pull condition. So in that condition, you don't have to really activate, and that was the reason that this athlete was showing a relatively lesser activation with the shuttles. Okay, so it is not an issue, it is a technical movement. That's why the activation with the shuttle was relatively less, and the activation without shuttle was relatively high, because here you have to, without the shuttle, you have to really pull back the arm backward, so the muscle activation is relatively higher. Now, another thing which I would just want to inform you is that, okay, now if you look into the men, you find that their shoulder joint, elbow joint, and the wrist joint is in one single line. But if you look into women, you find that there is almost a lateral flexion of 15 degrees from the elbow joint. See here, you can see this women. Okay, so what happens in relation to the execution in terms of men and women is quite varied. Now here you can see this athlete, this badminton player. If you look into the wrist and the shoulder joint is in one line, and the elbow joint is slightly higher. That means during the execution part, okay, there's already a shoulder internal rotation that has taken place. So instead of executing more onto the pectoral muscle, in as in the swimming case which I explained earlier, this athlete is tending to have more of right shoulder activity. Okay, so here you can see still and the follow through, you can find that the elbow is slightly higher than the alignment of shoulder and wrist. And if you see here, see the alignment of shoulder is here. I mean the shoulder joint is here, and whereas the elbow is here, and the force application is away from the shoulder joint. So if you want to apply real great forces, then probably execution movements in line with the shoulder joint would be really good. Now, for example, if I want to push, if I'm pushing in line with my shoulder joint, I will be having greater force application. Now, if I'm pushing away from my shoulder joint, what will happen? Now, for example, if I'm pushing this table, if I push from one side, the table will start rotating. Why? Because the force is not from the center of the table, it is from away. So there is a possibility of force follow through also in rotation, which causes a lot of internal rotation of the shoulder joint, and that can lead to injuries. So you need to identify that, okay, in execution of any movements of the upper extremity, there is a lot of difference between men and women in terms of muscle activation and in terms of the synchronization of joint movements or the chain of joint movements. In this, variations will be there, and that needs to be corrected by the coaches if the athletes need to be strong enough in the shoulder joint and to perform better. Also, if they need to perform better, they need to be really strong onto the shoulder joints. Now this is an imbalance aspect for a Paralympic athlete. So we did again here. I'm not going to show the result part of this athlete, but you can see that, see, when you don't have one leg, automatically while executions are there, I mean execution is made by this power lifter, there will be a lot of oscillation of the bar, and the sequence of shoulder, hip, knee, I mean shoulder, elbow and wrist lift technique will be also varying, and there will be bit of tilt. So it is quite tricky for this kind of Paralympic athlete who have one limb or one session or one extremity cut off. The balance part is relatively higher, I mean relatively low, hence the injury chances are quite high. So we have to streamline their lifting techniques to a great extent by stabilizing the core area and modifying the area angle in which you are doing the lift. That needs to be coordinated and synchronized. So it's actually a heavy piece of work which needs to be done for this kind of athletes. All right, I will skip some of the things. Okay, this is this I'll show it as my last slide. This is actually a pattern of muscle activation of an archer for 36 shots. Is actually a Paralympic on wheelchair, and you can see that, see this left middle deltoid, this violet color graph, it is actually varying from each and every repetition. There is a varied performance by this archer. So the activation is not constant, it is varying. Whereas for all other group of muscles, that is this mainly for the left deltoid, that means the carrying angle of the bow. Okay, so in that variation is there. So that means automatically there is possibility that your accuracy will be relatively less for this athlete. So you need to stabilize his shoulder joint and elbow joint, and especially the core area has to be stabilized so that this athlete have better stability in doing the draw. Okay. All right. With this, in general use of EMG can help the sportsman to perform movements with proper muscle function and coordination. In elite sports, where the difference between the athletes is bare minimum, just gaining 1% improvement in terms of muscle performance and coordination, precise use of technique would result in an edge to winning performance. In clinical, it would assist the physio to channel and shaping of muscles to the functional demand of the sports. So with this, yeah, I thank you, and thanks to Mangalore University Department of Physical Education for allowing me to share my presentation. If you have any questions, yes.
So before we conclude, can you please cope up with the question and answer, sir, in the Q&A box?
Q&A. Yes, from where we should start?
We can start from Prakash, yes, sir. How EMG study will help you to know the effectiveness of training.
Okay. I already explained to you. Okay, see, for example, I showed you the swimmers issue with injury. How EMG helps you to identify the synchronization part or execution movement execution of the athlete in terms of technique. So if you are correcting the technique, probably the injury can be minimized, or the onset of injury can be minimized. If you are not correcting the technique, then probably this athlete is undergoing so many repetitions, 10,000 repetitions he may be doing per day, and that can lead to further injuries. So EMG does helps you to identify pattern of movements, sequence of movements, or chain of action. Now, for example, let's say I'm a fencer. Okay, I'm fighting with a person who is taller than me. So what happens is that I have to have relatively a lift, tilt in the shoulder, because I'm fighting at a taller person. So naturally, my chain of action will be elbow opening first, then only the shoulder joint will open. So the pattern of muscular movement will vary. If I'm fighting with a person of same, then probably my shoulder joint will open first and then my elbow extension. If I'm fighting with a guy who is still shorter than me, naturally, yes, it's again the shoulder joint opening and then elbow. So identifying pattern of movements according to the opponent's structure or stature is another thing which can be looked into. Okay, what is the difference between asymmetry activity and activity index? Asymmetry I have already shown you in that weightlifting. Okay, what is actually happening in terms of injured muscle and how the other group of muscle is compensating for the activity by having the hip joint, that is the toe, to be slightly inverted, facilitating hip rotation, and then the rectus femoris is activating to a greater extent. That is one way. Or just shifting the body weight during half squat or clean and press or whatever exercise you do, you're shifting onto the stronger foot and then making your muscle to activate. That is you can identify as this as asymmetry, but I don't understand activity index. I don't know whether it is the speed of activity or execution of the activity under different intensities. I'm not sure about it. The question is not clear to me. Yes, sir. Will it help for use medical purpose who is having injury? As I explained to you that what are the cost of these machineries? That Sumant will be in a position to give you a feedback. Please clarify the relation between biomechanical application and physiological application. Yes. Now, biomechanical application, already Dr. Gerald has shown you some lunging exercises, and I have also explained to you in terms of biomechanics. Physiological, yeah, when it goes in terms of fatigue, looking into muscular fatigue, yes, physiology can be looked into. You can combine some biochemical parameters to see how much of lactic acid has been produced during the exercise and related to physiology and fatigue. When I was lunging, my leg means if I did the squats, my knee will get pain. If I'm doing this test, can I know my problem? Can I get solution for this? I think you need to demonstrate it correctly to me. Then only I will be in a position to solve your issue. I don't really get when I was lunging, but not so clear. Okay, the question is not clear. So
Hello, sir. I think next set of questions we'll do after the third session. We'll have a total discussion next session. So I think we'll start the next session. Thank you very much, sir. Now I request Dr. Jay Prakash to introduce the next panelist.
Thank you, sir. It was very informative on your Dr. Sajid Joseph. Thanks a lot. Moving on to the third and final session for today's webinar. I would like to introduce the third speaker, Dr. Senthil Kumaran D. He is currently working as an associate professor at Manipal Academy of Higher Education. He is a PhD holder under Manipal Academy of Higher Education, a master's degree awardee in physiotherapy, and a bachelor degree holder in physiotherapy. His additional educational qualification includes course on supervising doctoral studies, Coursera, APM online course system, certificate course in bioethics, NDT BOBAT certificate course in management of adults with stroke and brain injury, certificate course in biostatistics, epidemiology and research methodology, and also a PG diploma in computer application. He has a very vast research experience and has many publications to his account. Has published around 19 papers in various journals. He is a life member of the Indian Association of Physiotherapists and also Indian Federation of Neurorehabilitation, a member of the Spinal Cord Society, Neurodevelopmental Therapy Association, and the Society for Indian Physiotherapists. Today, he shall be enlightening you all on the topic related to EMG applications in rehabilitation. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the warm welcome. Is my slide visible?
Yes, sir, it is visible. You can carry on. Yeah.
Okay. So first, I would like to thank Dr. Gerald for inviting me to share my experiences. Because this platform is kind of, I'm enjoying actually, though I'm going to present, because it was nice actually. I think my job will be relatively easy because Dr. Gerald has introduced about EMG, and then Dr. Sajju has explained very well about the sports analysis and all those things. The remaining part is actually the clinical applications. Be it is a sports or be it is a neurological rehabilitation or orthopedical rehabilitation, whatever it is. So I'm going to give no slight introduction about that. Okay, I'll just stop the video and then I will start. Okay, so once again, good afternoon to everyone. So I'm going to discuss about the EMG applications in rehabilitation. Is my slide changing, sir?
Yes, sir, it's clear.
Yeah, okay. So just I'm going to give brief introduction and then about EMG specific considerations when we actually do, or as a clinician or as a physical educator or as a strength and conditioning trainer, we need to have certain aspects, especially if you want to publish your research or disseminate your research into the community, research community. And then the next part would be applications in rehabilitation in terms of assessment and treatment, and finally what we did in our lab here. So that will be my session. Now, if you all know, now the current generation or current era is full of technology. They cannot live without the technology. So everywhere now the technology is there. And even medical field or sports field, every field has embraced the technological advances. So mainly being in a clinical practice, we deal mainly with the patients with the injury or movement pathologies. The technology is also there or is very important in injury prevention or rehabilitation of the movement pathologies. So mainly why we need this, we need to have a proper assessment system. I think previous speaker explained very well about the assessment system. Some of the audience asked like, what is the implication in training? The same EMG only we are just going to do it. Assessment you just do one time and then understand, and accordingly you design your therapy or accordingly you suggest the athlete to change the strategies. And then in case of the intervention, we do once again the assessment in the post-intervention and to assess whether whatever we have planned, our intervention is effective or not. So whatever it is, we need to definitely assess, and that too we need to have a quantitative. You can say athlete is performing well, but you need to understand in case if they are not performing well, why they are not performing well, what is the problem? So you may have to look back biomechanically, what is happening within his joints or the muscles. So you need to quantify. So for that, we have a number of assessment system. In the initial slide, Dr. Gerald introduced in ECG in cardio, or no, every field has a technological thing. But if you see ECG or any other thing, how it actually is implemented in today's practice, but EMG is not that utilized. There are many number of reasons. I'm not going into that details. Why it is not implemented much is because of the difficulties or the barriers. Many of the barriers actually is solvable. But however, having said that, even it is used, or mainly it is used in case of a biomechanics. Biomechanics is nothing but kinematics and kinetics. Coming to the point is kinetics, where we have to assess the muscle activity. And for that, we have a muscle activation measuring tool. So EMG is nothing but a muscle activation measuring tool. It will give you information about the muscle performance. Now, in general, if you see EMG, it is nothing but a diagnostic procedure, primarily to assess the health of the muscle and nerve cell that control them. Other way, if you can say, it is an electrodiagnostic medicine technique for evaluating and recording the activity, electrical activity produced by a muscle. When we do some activity, it is produced by, can be a voluntary or by electrically induced. So in case of a normal sports or normal people, they can produce an activity, they can contract their muscles. But if they have a problem, like in neurological conditions because of the paralysis, or even in the sports condition, if they have a severe pain, if they're not able to produce a particular activity, all those things, when we go for electrically induced activation. So even in that case, we can do electromyography. So electromyography is the whole procedure, but the instrument what we use is electromyography, and what the output, I think Dr. Gerald has shown all the output, that is called electromyogram. That is what EMG. And there are two types. This was also actually already explained to you, that is invasive and non-invasive. The invasive, not every person can do. You have to have a approval for using the invasive techniques. Non-invasive techniques, we all can use. That is mainly a surface EMG. It's also called as a kinesiological EMG when it is used for the kinesiological purpose. Now, the second part of my thing, like I said, some consideration we need to remember whenever we are doing the EMG, mainly in 4 aspects: when you're collecting, when you're managing, when you're normalizing, and when you're analyzing. This is already many things were explained by Dr. Gerald, but I just wanted to emphasize few aspects from a user perspective, So the first thing is the collecting. So when you collect, the first thing that you have to do is First, what is the purpose? What is your purpose? Like for what purpose you are going to use your EMG? That is the first thing. Like if you wanted, your intention is to study some muscles, or sir explain now, sprinting or swimming, weightlifting, everywhere. So all those things, the purpose is to assess the muscle activity. And most of the time, if your surface or indwelling electrode, this determination is based on the purpose. So based on your study purpose only, you have to decide whether you have to go for a surface or indwelling electrode. If you want to know general information from the superficial muscles, you have to go for surface electrode. If you want to go for a deep muscles, but nowadays even the sensors can pick up the deep muscles also, it's very advanced. But some decades back, if you want to go for a deep muscle, or if you want to discriminate the motor units, if you want to study the control of the motor units, or if you want to ensure the sampling from muscle located deep in the body, you may have to go for an indwelling. Mainly in clinical conditions or neurological perspective or neurophysician, they go for indwelling to identify what is the pathology in that particular muscle, because they wanted to know exactly how many motor units are there. If a patient comes with myasthenia gravis, or if a patient comes with paralysis, or if the patient comes with the carpal tunnel syndrome. So they wanted to know actually exactly find out the motor unit, what is happening, all those things. So for that, indwelling is a one. But please remember, this is actually again emphasized by one of the previous speaker. Whatever you do, like fine wire is a common method of indwelling electrode or the surface electrode. Most of the studies have stated that it's having a greater reliability. What does it mean? The data that you get will be more or less same. Whether it is a surface or indwelling, the data that you get will be more or less same. Of course, there are some limitations are there. For indwelling, it is a surgical thing. It's going to cause pain. But the advantage is it is very specific. There is no crosstalk. There is no crosstalk within the muscle. You will get exactly what you wanted from a muscle. The surface, you have issues. What issues? Like sometimes it might pick the signals from the other muscle also. Localization of one particular muscle may be slightly difficult, but all those things are much rectified in today's generation. So that's the first thing. The second thing is whether cabling or telemetry, which one you wanted to go. I think in previous speakers, sir showed some of the things they have done with the cabling, like wired one. There are certain things that telemetry, what Gerald sir showed, that is a wireless surface. Trigno is a wireless electromyography. So it all depends on your preference, with your intent, or again, which you are comfortable with, your experience, or most importantly, whether the equipment is available and level of technical support, or with which system that introduces a lead encumbrance. For example, if you want to know on field in case of a sport, definitely you have to go for telemetry one. You cannot go for a cabling. But whereas the patient is there in an ICU or in the ward, we can go with actually a cabling also. So it all depends on that. But cabling definitely will affect the performance. You may not, that's why I said the real life thing, real life, what exactly, how they will exactly, because nowadays there are a lot of researchers are there between the controlled and real life environment. People will behave slightly different in a controlled and then in a real life environment. And telemetry, it's good, least encumbrance, but the problem is it has its own limitation of signal acquisition. But again, this also is very well tackled by most of the system requirements. This is the second thing that you need to remember. The third thing is electrode types. The electrode types, already sir introduced indwelling. There are specialized fine wire and the needle. Most commonly, if you want to use for the kinesiological or these things, you go for a fine wire, not the needle one. So that's a picture already you have seen also. The surface electrode, we have standard or pre-amplified. Now we have all pre-amplified, like even the DELS also is a pre-amplified. Already it is amplified. So those kind of electrodes are there. Surface electrode still with the wiring method. We can use even the surface electrode with the wiring also, with the cabling also. These are the electrode types. Now what you have to remember, like whenever you're using, The main thing is electrode size or the location, because you have to select accordingly. If you want to go for a smaller muscle, then definitely your electrode should be small, and probably the smaller the inter-electrode distance also. That is one thing that we have to remember. And skin preparation, I'm not going to touch. There is a CNM guideline, already it was explained to you. This is actually a project where they have given all detailed explanation. You can go and then find out if you want to know where to place, how to place, all those things. So in particular, surface electrode, what is the material they use? Whether silver or chloride or geometry, disc or bar or rectangular. Now dialysis is a rectangular. Or size. What is the diameter, radius, width and length? The sensor size. What I have quoted here is actually the one which we have, the dialysis. You are supposed to actually know all these things. Mainly when you are communicating to the global fraternity, or if you're sending for the journals or publications, you need to provide all these details. You need to provide all these details. Whether use of a gel or paste or alcohol, whatever it is, or inter-electrode distance, in what we use the dialysis is 10 millimeter, or electrode location, orientation, in what orientation that you have to place. Ideally, the orientation should be in line with the assumed direction of the underlying muscle fiber. In line with the muscle fiber direction. You cannot keep in a horizontal. It has to be in a longitudinal, in line with the underlying muscle fiber to get a better actually the activity. So these all things actually you need to know. That's certain things which you need to know in terms of a collecting. Now you have collected how to manage certain consideration which you have to remember in managing. This also is introduced already to you. You get the data of raw, which is unprocessed, and the other one is processed data. Now, raw data also is important. I think Dr. Gerald already has told. Even raw data, you have to monitor. You know why? Because later, if you want to know, or if you want to understand the different dimensions, you can go back and look at your raw data and then you get. We actually have done some of the studies when we did. Then later on, we wanted to know what is happening, and then we went and then we looked at the data. So you definitely have to store the data and monitor. Monitoring is visual. Whenever you do the data, please look at the raw data also. Because see, for example, if the patient or if the person does not have any activity, I know it won't happen in a sports field, but in our field, when we do neurological patients, there are patients who come with no activity at all. So in them, raw data is important. We just have to see whether there is any activity or no activity. So for that, you need to see. So monitoring is important. Storing is important. And then later on, you can score even based on the raw data. Also, you can do scorings. The next thing is a processed. So processed, we have so many mechanisms, which as a clinicians or as a practitioners, we just need to know, but most of the things are already set in the mission itself, or we can take anytime the technical help from the people. Like Sumant, we used to call every now and then take a lot of helps. So when we are writing, when we published the articles and all. So processing filters is a one, and then number of poles that are used in the filter, time constant used by the filter to smoothing of the data, so smoothing and sampling frequency. These are also important. So these are the things that we have to consider when you're processing the data or when you're looking at the processed data. Now, for the processed data, or in the raw data also. Raw data, you can actually send it for the processing. A processed data means already you have done all the processing and you can go for analyzing directly. The raw data has to go for normalizing and then go for analyzing. I mean, the processing, amplification, you just need to know. These all I'm saying because you need to just know, because you have to report all these things if at all, if you wanted to present your work in a conference, if you want to present your work in a research, publish in an article. So amplifier, whether it is a single, differential, double, or impedance, what is the impedance, or common mode rejection ratio, or signal to noise ratio, or what is the gain that we have used, all these things has to be mentioned. And filtering, this is Dr. Gerald already told, that is a low and high pass filter, preferably 10 to 350 Hertz. Sir also said in that range, like 10, I think 500 hertz. But definitely some of the journals will ask for you what is the hertz that you have used, the pass filter. Definitely it cannot go down 10. It has to be at the 10, the low. The high, it has to be definitely 350. It cannot be 250, it cannot be 200. Higher you can go, 500, 1000, you can go. But it cannot come down at the 350. Then filter types, what are the types? Or cutoff frequencies, all these things that we need to know. It's all there in the equipment itself. It's very easy. Only you just need to know so that you can just understand what is that filters or all those things. And rectification, full wave or half wave rectification is that. Full wave is nothing but actually, if you see the negative is considered and then it is rectified. Whereas half wave is the negative is removed, which you can see from the picture. This is another one, rectification that is happening in the system. These are all the things comes under the amplification. Then the next thing in the processing, smoothing is very important. That is already sir told, like raw data, how you can smooth this, you can get the root mean square value. That is another one way that we get the smoothing. Otherwise, smoothing the signal with the low pass filter also is fine. These all we have to actually say. How did we smooth the total signal? What was the method that we used? The RMS is nothing but the time period over which the average thing is calculated. It's the root mean square. That is the best way of actually the processing the data. Whenever we get the raw, we can in DELSYS, you have the option that where you get the RMS data also simultaneously. There are integrated things are there where signal is actually integrated over the time. So you need to mention the time or voltage that we use to reset the integrator or what threshold that it was set. And finally, the power density spectra. This is mainly for the frequency domain. So there are two domains, which I'll be telling you later. We have a time domain analysis and frequency domain analysis. The time domain analysis is actually this RMS and everything comes in that. The frequency domain analysis is basically the density, the power density, like how much maximum the person is getting, is able to activate. So most of the time in sports field, this will be used most often. But you have to know what is the time epoch. Time epoch is nothing but each window, how much time that you are taking. Even in RMS, like it will take 5 milliseconds data and then do the average. Because RMS itself is the root mean square. It's an average, it's a mean. So that mean is for every 5 milliseconds or 10 milliseconds or even 2 milliseconds. That way it has to be known to us. And then the window, there are various windows. This is not for us, but just we can know. And then taking the algorithm, that is frequency, filters, all those things, or median or mean frequency. MDF is a median frequency and mean frequency when you are doing a power density spectrum. And finally, certain times we keep the velocity also as fixed. So all those things will come under the power density spectrum. So these are certain things which you may have to know if you want to communicate your work with the scientific community. That is the managing part. Coming to the normalizing, this is the most thing. Still it is studied because still we have different methods. Each one comes with different method, the normalizing. But why the normalizing is important, or what is normalizing? Normalizing is nothing but you're taking a data. But when you are reporting the data, you have to have some reference contraction. Like for example, if I'm there, I'm doing an activity. But the same activity when I do another time, that might be some variations. So with the patients, because each one is individualistic. You take gait or posture or anything, everything is individualistic. So it might change even within a person from time to time. So how do you know that whatever you are saying or whatever you're recording at that particular point of time is the correct one? So for that, we need to normalize the data. So for that, we have to have a reference contraction. It's nothing but just you have to divide the derived data by a reference value. How do we have the reference value? From where we get the reference value? For that, we have different n number of methods for that. So whatever you get the data, that RMS data, RMS itself is a kind of like a rectification, but even then you have to normalize. So before normalizing, you have to divide this data by a reference value. That depends on whether you are doing between subjects or between different days or between different muscle, or the same person at one time, the same muscle, you have not removed the electrode within the same day. If you're going with the same person within a day, same muscle, then to some extent, normalizing is not required, but I would not recommend going without the normalizing. But if you're going with the between subjects or many muscle, different days, then you have to definitely do normalizing. Nowadays, every international thing asks for normalizing. What did you do for normalizing? How did you normalize the data? All those things will be asked definitely. That is mainly decided by these factors. And this reference value, you can take either as a dynamic or static. That again, you have to decide. We have to decide whether to take a dynamic or static. I'll explain to you what is dynamic and what is static. The commonly used method is maximum voluntary isometric contraction. This is actually a static. Means you make the patient to contract. Isometric is there is no change in the length. Only the tone will change. So you make the patient to contract maximum voluntary isometric contraction. But like Sir Saju sir told, sometimes it may not be possible. You may have to go for a concentric, because not all people will be able to do isometric contraction. If they have a pain, if they have a fatigue, you don't know. So maximum voluntary isometric contraction is the most commonly used. And it's also sometimes represented in percentage MDIC. Other methods are, they consider the peak EMG, mainly in case of a dynamic, like in our practice, when we do, because we assess walking, we assess movement. So here we use actually peak EMG or mean EMG, anything. Peak EMG is a maximum thing, or mean EMG. All these methods are there. And of course, you have to compare the values on the involved side. Those are the same muscle on the uninvolved side. This is another method. You can form a ratio. You can form a ratio. Someone said asymmetry, how? You can compare with the other side, or so you can form a ratio also, and you can report. Nothing wrong in it. You can, if it makes sense, you can report like that. And apart from reference contraction, another one normalizing is sampling interval. That is, again, it is most of the time it's come with the machine, it is fixed. Sampling interval, like how much time the sampling is, or how many times you're repeating. The number of repetition matters when if you're doing in case of a fatigue assessment. So that is in case of a normalizing. These are the 4 methods was suggested by these authors, Burden. They said there are 4 methods, the same only. Dynamic mean is taking the mean, or dynamic peak method is dividing a raw data by the peak. Isometric maximum voluntary contraction, or isokinetic, where the velocity is common. So these are the existing method. I'm just giving you an introduction, that's all. You can read further. That's not the scope of this actually a webinar. The last one is analyzing. Okay, you have collected, certain things, and you have normalized, and then finally analysis. Mainly analysis happens in 2 domains, time domain and then the frequency domain. Time domain, where you get to know about the time factors like frequency of the activation, all those things are amplitude, signal amplitude in terms of voltage, all those things you understand. The frequency domain is how frequently the waveform crosses the baseline. This is in case of, this is conduction velocity, like muscle fiber conduction velocity. Most of the time, if you want to know the endurance, the performance, how tiredness, when they're performing some activity, all those things, you have to look at the frequency domain. So what is happening to the conduction velocity? Is it maintained, or there is a decrement, or there is, with the training, there is an increment? All those things you have to look at the frequency domain. So what you have to do in time domain is, first you have to make sure there is no artifact, then whether there is any muscle activity on or off, then visual estimation, then assess the duration of the activity, then estimate the level of activity in terms of amplitude. That's what in a time domain. Frequency domain, spectral analysis you have to do. Spectral analysis, you have to do median frequency and mean power frequency. This is all a statistical method which will be derived from the data itself. So these are the parts in analyzing. This is in brief about what are the things that you have to consider. Coming to the application, particularly to the surface electromyography, it's used in assessment as well as in the treatment. Assessment, I can say in one word, which will cover all the field muscle function, be it sports, be it as a neurology, orthopedics, whatever the field, the primary use of electromyography is to assess the muscle function and assess the movement control, gait, everywhere again the muscle function only. Work site assessment, ergonomics, how we are sitting in our workplace or how we are working, how we are typing, all those things. Fatigue assessment. So all these things way you can do assessment. Treatment again, muscle function, if you are doing exercise or if you're doing some intervention, or as a physical educator, you are training for them or you're suggesting the way to modify or appropriate method, you can assess pre and post and then see. So all these ways you can do in a treatment. And then biofeedback again. So this is another one they do now in sports field, lifetime thing. They can feel how they are doing, performing, which muscle, suppose throwing, which muscle they are activating. They are not supposed to activate this particular muscle while they are bowling, because that might cause the shoulder trauma. So lifetime they can see also which muscle they are activating, which muscle they should not activate, all those things. That's biofeedback. We use in patient population also the same biofeedback. Wherever the muscle activity less, we will tell them, see, it is less, you do. So they will bring out the activity, or wherever it is more, it will be represented in a simple graphical manner to the patient, not the one which you saw now. It will be converted. That's a special software package which comes. It will be converted into simple lines, simple graph, so that the patient or layman also can understand. And you have to tell them, see, if it comes taller, then it is you are activating more. If it is smaller, then you are activating less. So that way you can tell the patient, or you can tell the individual, and they can modify their activity. So what we see overall, irrespective of the field, look for amplitude, look for timing, look for morphology. Waveform also is important. Morphology is waveform, how it looks like. Like sir was saying, Gerald sir showed somewhere it is peak, somewhere it is sinus curve, all those things. That gives some information. And spectral features, conduction velocity, or innervation zone displacement, or synergy. Synergy is like you assess all the muscles, like when you're throwing the ball, or when you are running, when you're cycling, assess all the muscles and then find out the muscle activation pattern. That's all the coordination and control strategy. So these are all the things only we assess. Quickly, I'll just run through this. I'm not going to discuss in detail. These are the applications areas. First is physiology and basic clinical studies. You can assess muscle coordination by using surface electromyography. So how it can be represented, you just have to assess agonist and antagonist. This is the one traditionally they use, but nowadays they go for a primitive synergies. You can extract the primitive synergies. Primitive synergies is nothing but actually multiple muscles, and then you get the activation pattern, which muscle is working first, which muscle is coming next. All those things you can identify, which you have seen even in the graph also, when sir was explaining in the first speaker, even the second speaker. So, or even you can just do, if not possible, agonist and antagonist. Agonist is the one which produces a movement. Antagonist is the one which actually limits the movement. So you can see the coactivation ratio between this. That also gives some idea about the muscle coordination. It is very important for biomechanical analysis, particularly when it comes to gait analysis, or even in the neurological impairment or orthopedic, or even in sports. Definitely the muscle coordination is the one which we will most often see. Second thing, primitive synergy. Already I have told what is primitive synergy. It's a muscle activation pattern represented by EMG envelopes of few muscles. You just see few muscles and then see how it is, how the activation pattern is. That is what primitive synergy. This is very important for any analysis of motor control. If you want to know how the patient is doing lunges, or how they are weightlifting, or how they are throwing, or how they are running, you need to know the pattern, muscle activation pattern also. So that is very important in this. The next, muscle force estimation. This is another one where we can measure the net torque. But we have to remember the torque is basically produced by all the factors like passive force and active force. Number of muscles or ligaments, all these things are active forces. Passive structures, elongation of the tendon, all those things, or external force, gravity. When you're doing weightlifting, gravity also actually plays. Gravity also pull, and then the subject is supposed to do against the gravity. So it gives all net torque. But whereas this force by the muscle is individual muscles. So the torque may remain constant, but the individual muscle may fluctuate. So that is what you have to remember whenever you're doing. Indefinitely, this kind of analysis has to be done in a sport, because in sports, you look for net torque, how much force they are generating, how much Newton they are generating. But that generation, because of the individual muscle force activity. So you can go back and then look at which muscle is producing more, which muscle is producing less. So if you know normally which muscle is mainly contributing for that particular activity, in training, you can focus. You can train only that particular muscle. It's just as simple as like that. For throwing, if you feel every muscle is important, I'm not saying a single muscle, every muscle is important, but among that, there are some muscles which may have to really work, which might really produce the maximum force. So if you know in a normal, healthy, or if you know, understand, you can even train that particular muscle if it is weak or something like that. That is muscle force estimation, which we can do. Fatigue estimation. Again, this also, I feel even in sports field also, it's important. You need to understand the fatigue also, after how long they are attaining the fatigue, whether this particular person or individual is fit for sprinting or marathon. All those things matters. So fatigue estimation most of the time is defined in terms of how long the patient or individual can maintain the force contractions. Most of the time in isometric. So it can be interpreted in two ways. Mechanical fatigue. Mechanical fatigue is just you assess the endurance time, how they are able to perform a task. The myoelectric is you look at the EMG and then you look at the muscle fiber conduction velocity, which will definitely decrease after a period of time. If I am standing, suppose now I am standing, and then after 30 minutes, if you assess my muscle activity, definitely the conduction velocity might slowly decrease because of the fatigue component, because of the level of contraction. How it happens? Because this reduction in the conduction velocity, what produces is it compresses the power spectrum. I said the power spectrum, you have to look at the frequency domain. So what happens? All the things will be towards the lower frequencies, and there will be a decrement. Like initially, if you see complete on the monitor, you can see all spikes, but after some time, what happens? That goes down. So that is called decrement. So you have to assess in that way. Even visual representation also will tell how long the patient is able to hold. After some time, it will go slowly less. That means fatigue is setting in. Fatigue started setting in. So in this way, even you can assess in normal, different people who is having a best or highest fatigue threshold, how long they can, or individually also you can, because that is one of our aim. When you train the athlete, they have to be fatigue resistant. They should not. Again, it depends on the field, depends on the sports activity. Some places they definitely have to withstand, as I said, marathon. Some places you need only the force. You don't need actually this endurance. So it depends on that. And most of the time, what you have to remember, one thing is, if at all, if you want to study the fatigue, maybe you have to go for isometric contractions only. You cannot go for intermittent dynamic, because intermittent means, because it's all directly related to the physiology, like blood flow. If you constantly produce a contraction, so over a period of time, the blood flow reduces. But if you do intermittent, again, there is a gap so that they will get more oxygen, they will get more. So it will not give you a correct interpretation of the fatigue. Next is muscle activity localization. There are advanced now EMG imaging, it is called, or EMG tomography. High density electrode array is there. Just you have to put it, and that will tell where exactly the muscle activity is happening. It will help to identify the active muscles or geometry of motor units and their innervation zone. Innervation zone is nothing but actually that we'll see in the next slide. And this is used again in a biofeedback application. So the patient real life, they can see, and then they can see whether they are activating or not activating. The innervation zone is nothing but the origin of action potential propagation, where it is produced. That is what the innervation zone. Whenever there is a change in the length during the activity, it will shift. So this shift you can estimate by using the raw signal whenever they are doing how the shifting is happening. Why it is important, this innervation zone, is to find out or to do a proper position of electrode pair between the innervation zone and the tendon junctions. Or target mainly botulinum toxins. This is the one which we use in case of children with the spasticity or adult with the spasticity. When we do in this injection, the spasticity is nothing but the tightness. So that will come down. Or if at all, if they wanted to do some surgery exactly to the nerve or muscle, they wanted to avoid the damage to the nerves, then it will help them to know exactly. Electrically induced, this is neuromuscular. Now it is all like EMG and electrical stimulation are tied together, and then that is how actually the picture is done. This is electrically elicited muscle contraction. I'm just letting you know, I'm not going into detail of this. And in neurology, spasticity or muscle overactivity, again, we do for all the muscles. There is something called stretch reflex threshold. Like whenever you do a stretch, how the muscle responds. Because if there is a spasticity, when you do a stretch, the muscle resistance increases. If in a normal, it will not increase. It's something like, I would say, it's not exactly like that, but just for your understanding, I'm saying something like cramp. So that we can differentiate. In the picture, you can see the blue line is for the healthy subjects, whereas the red is with the patient with the increased intracranial pressure, that is in spasticity, which will be there. If you see over a period, when you do different angles or increasing the angles, your EMG envelope will become less in case of healthy subjects, because repeatedly when you do, it reduces the reflex threshold. Whereas in case of these patients, when you do, it will actually show the increase also. Or sometimes you can decide whether you wanted to go for which treatment. All those things are possible. This is again, just I'm giving you an idea, because the first part only is important, like what we saw, the physiological, how to estimate all those things. This is another one important for even a sports field also, postural control. You can analyze the posture also. Posture is some of the muscles are called postural muscles, because these muscles oppose the pull of gravity. Even for if you want to stand on the field, the muscle has to work against the gravity. And some threat comes, then you have to react to that perturbations. And it will allow you to stand or sit or maintain particular posture. You're throwing the javelin, throwing a ball, you have to maintain some particular posture. Everywhere postural control plays a major role. And how they do? It's by activity. So even postural control analysis, when you look, you can use it, like how these surface EMGs getting changed, because this will change, depends on the age. Elderly people, the postural control will become less, or in case if they have a pathologist, it will get affected. So all those things, again, you can use. In orthopedic, one main thing is pain, and that is a pain muscle activation decreases. Patient or the individual will not produce the muscle activation, or there will be a symmetry problem, or fatigue can be there. So for all those things also, we use actually EMG, all these conditions. I think certain things Sir told related to the sports people. So these are all the things also, like ACL rehabilitation, or you can do with the injured runners. Definitely there will be a pain, patellofemoral pain. So all these cases we do. And if at all, if they're using some prosthetic or assistive devices, I think the previous speaker showed one photo where there was an amputee. So in amputation, we do targeted muscle reinnervation. Some of the normal nerves we'll try to put and then reinnervate. And then those muscles, again, will be linked to the EMG, so that that impulse, that will help the muscles that are weak to actually work. So that way, actually, it is used. And other areas, pelvic floor rehabilitation, even in high impact sport activity, definitely there will be a pelvic floor dysfunctions. So in those cases, another one commonly we use is in case of a pregnancy, women's health rehabilitation we use. Then ergonomics, I think already it was told, like how to, like in this picture, you can see when they are typing, what is happening to the upper back muscles, so that we can correct the pattern, how they are supposed to sit, or even we can prevent the work-related musculoskeletal disorders. So that area it is used. And sports, I'm not going to talk. The previous author has explained very well. It is very extensive. I think they have studied in each and every area of sports. All the things, any areas, it is mainly used. What we see is muscle fiber conduction velocity. All those things will give some idea, like mean and medial spectral frequencies. All those things will help us to understand the fatigue. And pathology. This is nothing but the temporomandibular disorders, like masticatory muscle function. Only very few I have put it, but actually it's many more, just to give an idea of where all actually it is used. All these areas it is there. Coming to the last section of my thing, this is what we have used in our lab. Like this is one of the things, like where we have actually looked at the neck muscle contractions. We gave one treatment, different set of treatment, and then we wanted to see how the neck muscle contracts, and then even we wanted to assess the endurance also. So we assessed the sternocleidomastoid and then scalene, anterior scalene. This is VMO and VL. We assessed with the different exercises for the limb with pain and without pain in subjects with the patellofemoral pain syndrome. We have used the other limb as a control limb, and then we assessed in various activities like adduction, extension of the knees, squatting with adduction. We wanted to see in which activity, which particular exercise the VMO and VL is getting activated more or less, and stepping up. This is another one where we assess postural control. Like these are the patients with stroke. We give sometimes the therapies like we tie the weight, because tying the weight increases the muscle activation, and that reduces the postural sway and improves the postural control. So we just used varying weight. We wanted to assess how much weight actually is sufficient or enough or required, basically. So we assess the tibialis anterior, lateral and medial gastrocnemius and soleus, and then we did this. We even did for the trunk muscles, internal, external oblique, rectus abdominis, erectus spinae. Of course, it's a little difficult, particularly if the patient is very obese, all those things. We wanted to correlate how the muscle activity during a different training activities, like one is sit to stand, another one is pelvic bridging, so that we wanted to know which activity should be started when the patient comes to us. So which one we have to give more importance, because in which activity the trunk muscle is getting activated more. This is another one, even which is applied to sports population, the taping technique. There is something called facilitatory taping. We wanted to facilitate the hamstring muscle, and we wanted to see what is the impact on knee muscle activation, particularly in patients with ACL deficient. And we wanted to even check the dynamic balance. During various activities also we assessed walking, stair climbing, hopping front, hopping back, all those things we did. And this is another one research which we could publish actually. This is, we wanted to see what happens when the patient walks on different surfaces, like even surface or uneven surface. This was done in a real life also. So this is, we created an area which included the stairs, ramp, and then people will come in between. Okay, then there will be a cognitive task. There will be a traffic and how they walk. So when during traffic, because these patients and all will not go to the community because of this postural problem. They think they will fall. The fear of fall is there. So all those things are there. So we just wanted to know how the impact is. So what we saw is we measure actually percentage MVC in our lab now. This is nothing but the mean by maximum into 100. We have come up with that. And then if you can see here, even surface percentage MVC on real life uneven surface. Everywhere if you see even surface, it is actually more of the real life environmental dimension. It is actually becoming less because they feel the threat when they walk. So they produce less activity, the activity is becoming less. And then we even did a calculation of co-activation. Like we compared the agonist and antagonist ratio. And if you see the even surface, sorry, one second. Yeah. So if you see the even surface and then real life. So this is between the bicep femoris and rectus femoris, that is at the hip level, agonist and antagonist. This is at the lower leg level, gastrocnemius and the tibialis anterior. And then we saw in the real life environment, when they walk on uneven surfaces, their co-activities increases. That is again because of the instability or fear of fall. So all those things. So these are the few things which we did. Only the last one I have put all the results. The other researches are all in actually review. So we were not able to share. There are many things also we did, like something called action observation, which again the concept came from a sports field. Like when a person sees somebody doing activity, or suppose if I want to learn swimming, or if I want to learn badminton, first component is I see how to do. So that is called action observation. So we wanted to see, or it is already there, when you see based on the brain activity studies, they say when you look at the activity and when you do the activity, the same areas are getting activated, the same muscles are getting activated, like that. So we wanted to see whether it is happening in the muscles. So what we did is we did simultaneously EEG, electroencephalogram, brain thing, and then we looked at the peripheral muscles also, or what is happening during the action observation. I could not actually put the photos. That also we have done. So these are some very minimal work which we did, but more into the rehabilitation aspect. So to conclude, definitely we all have to move to a stage where technology actually comes. Even if you see sometime back, we all were hesitant to move on to the online teaching or learning, but now the situation forced us. Of course, definitely technology has its own pros and cons, but anyway, we have to use. And cost, everything also, some of the people said definitely when we use more, the technology also will become more, and then the cost also hopefully should come down so that most of the people can use. So there are many barriers. What I want to say to take home message is definitely everyone, wherever is possible or feasible, we need to know, because first, before going for a performance training, we need to understand what is happening in the muscle. That will help us to plan a better intervention strategies or better training strategies for the patient. So that's all from my side. I thank Dr. Gerald, Sumant, and even the co-speaker, Dr. Saju, and Mangalore University. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjay Kumar, for your presentation. Now, before we conclude this webinar, I would like to call upon Dr. Gerald Santos D'Souza to give the concluding remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Jayaprakash. And thank you, Dr. Senthil Kumaran, for your wonderful insight into how it can be used for different clinical purposes. Now, before we go further, we will just discuss a few of the questions in the question and answers. There's a question, Dr. Senthil. How are we to apply EMG for cervical spine, lumbar spine, and lower back pain?
Okay, sir, if you would have seen in the picture also, we have done for scalene muscles and then sternocleidomastoid muscle. I wanted to correct the question. Like basically, joint function is assessed by a muscle function, because muscle is the one which performs the joint movement. So if you want to know, we just have to assess those muscles. Like paraspinal muscle also we can do, erector spinae. Okay, we just have to do over those muscles and then we have to assess the function. Did I answer the question? Yeah.
Okay, there is a question from Mr. Saktivel Purani. Is there any evidence supporting the EMG studies report in clinical assessment during injury rehab and management?
Of course. Of course, a lot of whatever I have put actually is all based on the evidence.
Clinical assessment.
Lot of studies are there. Lot of studies are there.
Then what is the best parameter for static fatigue? Mean spectral frequency or median frequency?
Spectral frequency includes both median and then mean, because spectral frequency is the frequency domain will give you, suppose when I contract my muscle, if you see in the monitor full of spikes will be there, but we cannot just take that raw data. So we have to go either a mean or median. The mean or median will be decided based on the distribution. If the distribution of the data is very uneven, then you have to go for a median. Means, for example, my contraction is almost same throughout each muscle fiber activity is more or less same, then you can go for a mean frequency. Otherwise, you have to go for a median frequency. That is just a statistical thing to be decided.
Okay, thank you, sir. Dr. Saju, are you there, sir?
Yeah, I'm there.
There's a question on which muscle group is very active during short distance cycling, like 1 kilometer or 500 meters.
Oh, it's a good question. I mean, see, short sprints, normally the quadriceps group activation is greater relatively. But then it's not just one group of muscle alone. It's a combination of glute, quad, and calf. These three are involved in the activation aspect. And that is in the producing the force aspect. And of course, it all depends upon, see, the relative contribution depends upon, for example, someone may have greater femur length and shorter tibial length. Someone may have greater tibial length and shorter femur length. And it also depends upon where you are setting up your position of your seat in relation to the fulcrum. Okay, height of the fulcrum, height of the seat, height of the handle, all these things are quite that is a decisive factor in relating which muscle activates more as compared to the other. Now, for example, I just showed you that video, that is a assessment of one of the athlete cyclists whose father did the bike setup, and where his calf muscle was activating more than the quadriceps muscle. So the position of the seat and the height of the seat and in relation to the fulcrum was a decisive factor for change. Calf muscle to be activating more than the quadriceps. But then, if you change it, the position according to the bigger group of muscle, which is supposed to activate more, then it can be beneficial in terms of that.
Okay, thank you, sir. There is one more question, sir, regarding you did that test on badminton player with and without shuttle. There is a question asking how do you share the thought process behind choosing a valid test to analyze the problem? How do you choose a valid test to analyze the problem for a badminton player using a shuttle and without a shuttle?
Valid test was actually, see, we did a cable pulling test to see whether the muscle was activating or there was sufficient strength in the muscle groups. It was more of something like what do you call the exercise, cable pulley, that is a rowing type of exercise. And the rowing exercise is similar to the mimic action of the badminton backward swing. Okay, so in that swing, you see, you need to set the exercise based on to the specific motion, what actually is being done in the sport. Now, it is not exactly, now, for example, you are doing half squat and you are doing a football kick is totally different. The specificity of movement is totally different. So you have to be careful in mimicking the action similar to that sports activity, and then going for selecting the exercise specific to with shuttle and without shuttle.
Thank you, sir. One more last question I think we'll take is how do you compare muscle activation effectiveness in cycling at different pedaling rate? How do you compare muscle activation effectiveness in cycling at a different pedaling rate?
Pedaling rate.
Yeah.
This pedaling rate frequency, that is the cadence, is actually depends upon, if you are going for sprint, even the pedaling rate will be relatively higher. That is, cadence will be relatively higher, and the activation of the muscles will be actually relatively higher. Whereas if you go for something like downhill or uphill and in plane, the cadence will be varying, and according to that, activation also will be relatively varying. Now, one of the most important thing is that here is trying to produce the peak force between something at an angle of something like I mean, if you're driving this way, okay, the peak between something like 7 and 8 p.m. Okay, if you take in terms of a cyclic activity between 7 and 8 p.m., that is something around 133 degrees from 12 o'clock if you take negatively. So something around 133 degrees of during that time your peak force application should come in. So what happens in plain cycling is that, okay, it comes something around that, but when you go for uphill, the angle of peak force production is at an earlier angle. Okay, so in training, if you see many cyclists who does uphill training, we will have greater peak production at the earlier angle, and that can be converted in actual plain cycling, so that the force production is produced at earlier stage, and that helps you in higher peak force production of quadriceps muscles in plain angles.
Thank you, sir. I hope you have satisfied the person asking the question. And Sumant, Mr. Sumant, one question is there. Are there any tools available for motion analysis in underwater sports?
Not, sir, really, because there are some challenges when it comes to underwater, especially the live transmission. But if somebody wants to assess the cardiovascular, like the heart rate or the postural studies, we have a system so that can be used for the swimming, but not for the diving, because it has the limitation of the 1 meter water depth. So it is very suitable for the swimming, but not for the diving applications.
But there are no EMG sensors which can be used underwater.
Not now from Delsis. Probably yes, maybe in near future, because I think there are many people who are expecting underwater sensors. So maybe in due course.
Okay, thank you, Suman. Viewers, thank you very much for your patient listening. I hope you have benefited a lot from the 3 sessions which we have had today. And Mr. Sumant, who is the training manager, training support manager of AID Instruments, has been very instrumental in providing training as well as providing information, the equipment. I think even Mrs. and Dr. Senthil will agree. I think even the Manipal Academy has been provided this equipment and training from the AID Instruments. And on behalf of the AID Instruments, I request Mr. Sumant to give a short presentation of what instruments they have. Mr. Sumant?
Yeah, thank you, all the participants, and I must thank all the distinguished speaker. It was a very nice and elaborative session. I would have loved the hands-on session, but like during the COVID, we could do only this much. But as Gerald sir said, we will definitely plan a hands-on session in the near future. So as a AD Instruments employee, I would like to just share a few slides. So if some of you wants to set up a lab or want to look for a similar setup or the instrumentation. So I work for AD Instruments and I am based in Bengaluru. So basically AD Instruments is a company. We are into the analog to digital conversion. You can say the name AD stands for analog and digital. So we follow these 3 simple principles to make the best products and show the potential of the products to the users and give them the better application support. So coming to the products, we have a two category basically. One is for the education. So we have a lab station and LT platform. So whatever we are recording or whatever we are planning to teach or do the research, so the same can be used to educate the students, and it can be either for undergraduates or graduates or even the PhD. These software platforms can be really useful for the educators, students, as well as for the administrators. So we have over 100 experiments which are into different domains, be it physiology, pharmacology, exercise, psychophysiology, and so on. So it's very easy to customize the experiments, and it's very intuitive for the students. So a quick glimpse on the research systems. So we have basically kind of combined systems or bundled systems depending on the applications. So we offer wide range of signal conditioners and transducers for a variety of applications, be it in human physiology, animal physiology, sports, or exercise. So our systems can be completely customizable and flexible, so depending on the customer's requirement. So that's one difficulty when somebody asks for the pricing. We need to really configure depending on the application and the kind of requirement. So we can discuss one-to-one when it comes to the pricing. So these are some of the parameters which can be measured or regularly used by our researchers. So some of the important applications I would like to highlight. One is the spirometry. So we offer flexible spirometry systems which can be used in either education or research setup to get the complete pulmonary or lung function testing applications, where the researchers can be able to get almost all the variables from the flow and volume data from the subjects. So one of the, I think, probably the exciting system is a VO2 max setup. So this is a one system which can be used in multiple departments, be it the sports performance or nutrition, or just to have the testing or athlete performance. So this has a variety of applications which can give multiple parameters, including the VO2 max, respiratory exchange ratios, and the pulmonary volume and flows, and also some of the cardiovascular parameters like ECG and its analysis, heart rate, and so on. So this is one of the good system, like if somebody wants to set up the exercise or performance lab. So I think some of the sensors basically will help to get a good understanding of the physiotherapy or biomechanics. So one thing on the left you can see is the balance board. This is a very portable board which is Bluetooth based. So basically this will allow the subject or a patient to stand on it or sit on it, so that this has four force sensors on the corner. So basically this is an easy way to get an idea on the postural balance, so that if somebody wants to have a study on the postural balance, and since it's very portable, using the Bluetooth, it can be paired with the lab chart software. So it can be a good add-on if you want to go for the postural studies. It can also give the weight distribution, since it shows the absolute values in kgs. So that can be a good add-on. And some of the other add-ons, you can go for hand grip dynamometer or a tendon hammer to get a kind of a reflex studies. You can also go for the joint angle sensors. So it is, I agree that it is not a complete system, but this can be an add-on to any assessment, or can be add-on to a EMG setup or something, just to trigger or to give an add-on parameter. And I think very well covered by most of the lectures. This was the EMG wireless EMG setup from Delsys. So this offers, I mean, very flexible and very robust sensors. So advantages are like it can also give some of the additional signals, not only just EMG. which are not there in many of the other competitor products. That is the kinematics or the kind of movements. Like it also have an inbuilt accelerometer, gyro, and magnetometer. So which can be very useful when you want to go for the movement analysis along with the EMG. And also in case of some of the studies where there won't be much of EMG activation, but there can be a tremors or a vibration. So which can be very well picked by the accelerometer sensor. So that can be an added advantage. And there are options where you can integrate the ECG, the goniometer, the twin axis goniometer, and the FSRs where you can see in this image. So the sensors are very small, which can be placed on the toe or the heel to get an idea on the weight distribution or the activation timings. So, and also it allows custom load cell adapter plugging in, so that which can be used with some third-party sensors. So the other thing which I was talking about is the equivital belt. If somebody wants to have a research for swimming, so this is water resistant up to 1 meter. So it's very useful because this can also log the data within the sensor. So if it is in a live transmission mode, it can work up to about say 70, 80 or even up to 100 meters if it is in the line of sight. It can also save the data as long as there is a battery within the SEM fully charged, so that it can collect all of this data in real time. And once the subject is back to the lab, so the data can be downloaded into the software and it can be analyzed. So the person who has jumped from the space, named Felix, he was actually wearing this equivital. So the data along with the all the accelerometer values was logged during his descent to the ground. So this can be one of the useful system when I want to go for some sports performance or field studies, yoga, and things like that. So also some of the important maybe signals, you can say reaction time is, I think, one of the very important parameter even when it comes to sports. So if a person is not able to respond to the stimuli on time, so probably even if he is physically fit, probably he might be underperforming. So we have some of the systems which can help to assess the kind of psychophysiological aspects. Like it can be a simple reaction time, reflex, or maybe a combination of multiple parameters. So as I said, we can really discuss with the researchers depending on what exactly they want to extract or what exactly they want to measure from the subjects. So we can configure the complete solution. So another thing probably I would like to say is the blood pressure, I think, is one of the very important parameter when it comes to maybe general health or sports performance or beat anything. So this is basically a beat-to-beat non-invasive blood pressure system. So this can measure the pressure, systole, diastole, and the calculated parameters like stroke volume and cardiac output, which can be in real time. Whereas the normal sphygmomanometer can only give the value once in say 30 seconds or so. Whereas we might have missed so many beats, which are the crucial part of the recording. So whereas this can give a continuous recording, which can be very useful in some of the studies which needs the real-time monitoring of the data. So I think I conclude the session by showing these slides. I once again thank you all the previous speakers and all of the participants for your patient listening. As Gerald sir said, we will definitely look forward to have a kind of a hands-on session if you are all ready to spend time. So we will share the feedback form, and probably if you can share your details, probably we can think over on that. Thank you very much. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Sumant. You have given us a insight into the mind-boggling possibilities of research related to sports sciences. And I'm sure we'll have a support for many, many years to come. And ladies and gentlemen, I will also like to tell you that you can reach our experts at the following way. Dr. Senthil Kumaran is working as associate professor in Manipal Academy of Higher Education, and Dr. Sir Joseph is a senior most biomechanist. So he was a biomechanist in Malaysia. Now he is a high performance director in Sports Authority of India at Bangalore. And I myself am working in the Department of Physical Education here. You can reach out to us for any kind of technical guidance or support, or even for giving your suggestions. I know there are many more experts over here who have got their own experiences in this field. And thank you all for joining us. And before we sign off, I would like to place on record our gratitude to the following persons who have made this webinar possible. First of all, I would like to um, place my sincere, heartfelt thanks to Professor P.S. Edaparitaya, the Honorable Vice Chancellor of our university. Despite his busy schedule, he has taken some time to go over our brochure and prepare a speech for us. And having inaugurated this program, he has given his full wholehearted support to whatever programs that the departments are conducting. And I also thank our registrar, Mr. K. Raju Mukavira. He has been instrumental. He never looks, never questions. Whenever he says, we are doing this webinar, he straight away says, so go for it. And he has been highly encouraging in that respect. And we also thank the other officers of the university, Professor P.L. Dharma, with the registrar, evaluation and finance officer, Professor B. Narayana, for giving their logistic support. I also thank all the syndicate members and academic council members. Most of all, I would like to thank the faculty of our department, Dr. Kishore Kumar, who is the director, as well as the dean of the department, my colleague, Dr. Prasanna, who is a convener, and Dr. Ramesh, and Dr. Haridas K, and all the other faculty members. I'd like to place on record the thanks to all the staff, all the professors and teaching and non-teaching staff of our university for having given their wishes, best wishes for this webinar. I'd like to thank my friend Dr. Jay Prakash for moderating the session. And importantly, I would like to thank Professor Sanjeev Ganesh for having given the logistical support for conducting this webinar program. I would also like to ask request the participants to excuse us for the technical labs which we had in the first 10 minutes. I'm sure everything went well thereon. And as Mr. Suman said, yeah, we are looking forward to have a hands-on session in EMG. Of course, we'll have other sessions on other aspects of sports sciences. But since we have introduced this EMG to you all, and you all have, I think many of you have become more familiar now. I told Mr. Suman, why not we have a session on handling the software? So we're thinking of giving a trial version and some files, what is that, actual files that is which we have gathered from our data, collected data, and maybe we can work on that, so that the lack of equipment should not be a hurdle to stop our venture for going towards research in this area. I think we should equip ourselves with whatever knowledge we get. We do not know when we'll get the opportunity, when we'll get the funding to procure the equipment, or maybe the neighboring universities or neighboring institution may have the equipment. Maybe with our contacts or on rent, maybe we can get the equipment. So on that basis, I think we have to look forward to improve our knowledge in this area. And specifically in this, I would like to conduct another workshop, hands-on workshop, at how to use this software, that is AD Instruments LabChat software. And uh, one more thing is, I have attached the feedback form in the chat box. I request everyone to answer the feedback form. Look, it's not important if you get a certificate or not. We want to know how we can improve our programs further. So please answer the feedback form, and all of the participants will get a participation certificate within a week. With these few words, once again, I thank our panelist, Dr. Sar Joseph, who's a good friend. And actually, Dr. Sar Joseph is my teacher in NIS when I did hockey. That is almost 25 years back, I think, 1994. And I'm just acquainted with Mr. Dr. Senthil. It was nice to know you, sir. And I think we'll be interacting future also, be sharing this knowledge. And I'd like to thank all the AD Instruments members. the AD instrument team who has been working with Mr. Suman, Mr. Pravesh Pokhriyal, Mr. Ras Muhammad, and Ms. Sandeep Kaur, who have been behind the scenes and who are on whose platform, Zoom platform, we have been conducting this webinar. I thank you all. Once again, I wish you all a good day and hope you will carry on the torch of this sports science research. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Have
everyone.
a good
Thank you,
day.
sir. Thank you very much.